Okay, this should be episode 31. We've reached that difficult point in life where you past 30, you know, the joys of youth have gone, they've faded away, and now you're having to face the cold, hard reality that you're on your own in life. There's no one supporting you anymore, Rip Torn gamers. Now you just have to get your own, you have to get real friends. You can't hang around with people from school anymore. You have to realize that this girlfriend you've got is probably the best you're going to get. So you got to cling on to her and just make a relationship. So I'm glad you're with me still, Monty. I love you. I'm Thorin. I'm the host of this show. In some senses, the star, but I don't like to say it like that. I like to make other people the star. I like to bring other people into my world, set up the platform where they can become famous. So I've got a few like little lesser known people in the community here. I'm going to try and boost their fame, you know. So see their Twitters down there, just follow them. They need a few followers. If anything, a few of my followers can leave and follow them if it works like that. I don't know how it works. So my regular co-host here, actually, it's ironic that I was speaking about like Monty as if he was sort of my long-term girlfriend who I'm stuck with, who we're in our 30s, you know, we're in that difficult phase where we have to commit to each other, because with that jumper that Monty's wearing there, he looks very much like the sort of thing that girls wear when it's like a day off, you know, they've got a cup of cocoa, they're inside watching some films, they've got a nice comfy jumper on, the dog's with them. So how you doing, Monty?
I'm doing great, you know, and as far as our relationship goes, I'm still like, I'm coming to terms and hoping that in our 30s that you mellow out a little bit and you can get over some of your youthful anger issues that, you know, sometimes cause me some public embarrassment. So
it used to be funny when we were younger, Monty, but now it's just become a bit tragic. And now you're just hoping, like all women, you're hoping that eventually, once I'm broken by life, then you can just change me, you know, and mold me to whatever you want me to be. And eventually, one day, maybe I will just be like Doa. But until then, I'm going to have to keep being me for now, Monty. So, oh, by the way, Monty also, they're going to wonder who you are, MonteCristo, because no one watches Korean League of Legends, okay? So
and they definitely no one will watch it now that we don't have any players.
And also, apparently, no one was watching Worlds either. So this guy, MonteCristo, like, he sometimes does Worlds. If you can ever, like, unlock your eyes from Doublelift, he's, like, sort of usually to the right of him a bit, scolding him, mentioning how they failed together in that team that was their hopes and dreams. And also, Monty's also, I'd like to call him a caster, and he likes to always mention, if you ever watch the show, guys, remember how he always mentions, like, he doesn't say, like, oh, I'm an OGN employee. He always says, like, yeah, I'm a freelance caster who's available for all gigs and birthday parties and bar mitzvahs, because he secretly wants other people to hear the show and then hire him. And so that might be happening, but I can't reveal where, guys. It's sort of like the Monty's quantum casting uncertainty principle, where even he doesn't know if he's casting an event right until the very minute before. So maybe he'll find out on the day that he's cast. I don't know. How you doing, Monty?
I'm doing great. Sometimes I don't even know where the continent I'm going to be casting in is either, but so I can exist in two places at the same time.
Well, actually, I just saw a great hype video for the GPL, so I think you should go there. I think they're an up-and-coming league. I think they've got a lot going for them. Also, by the way, jokes aside, I actually think that people made a good point where, you know, that GPL teaser looked terrible. Everyone said some stuff, right? Like, oh, if this had been Doublelift and those other players just doing the exact same thing, people probably would have hyped it. And I have to admit, they're probably right. You can do almost anything in like one of those Riot videos, and people are like, oh my god, did you see it? It's so sick. It's like every superhero movie in the world. There's always that like fake leak of like the costume like a month before, and someone's like, oh my god, have you seen that Batman outfit? It looks amazing. No one's ever been like, oh, that looks shit.
Or that Star Wars trailer that just came out.
Oh yeah, that looks pretty good.
That had
that's amazing.
Nothing in it.
Dude, it had Star Wars in it.
It had a black guy in it. Listen, we've come a long way. It was the 70s Star Wars started in. You're only allowed to be a jive-talking street hustler guy. Even in the Star Wars universe, that's the only sort of black guy you could be. Sort of like that guy out of Shaft or something. That guy who's all on the street. That's all you could be in Star Wars. But we've come so far. You can now be a stormtrooper and like essentially you can be evil and be black. That's what we've learned from Star Wars now. Krepo's actually already. I can see it in the back of his eyes. He's like, was it a mistake coming on this show? Could this affect my career negatively? Yeah. Welcome to Sony Insight. So my guest this week though. I like to give everyone I consider myself the historian of esports, Krepo. So I like to give people a bit of actual context so they understand like where a person's coming from and what they've done in his career. So some people like to think of Krepo as, you know, like when a strongman lifts like a huge weight above his head, and sometimes the weight can look enormous on both sides of the bar. And the incredible part isn't just the man lifting; it's that there has to be the weight there, because if the weight's there and we know how heavy that weight is, then we realize what a strong man he must be. And so part of the reason I've always had so much respect for Froggen as a player is I saw like these times when he could just, like superhuman strength, he could just lift, it felt like 4 teammates above his, and I've looked at him in real life, he's a really skinny guy, like, but I know he's very dedicated, and it felt like he could do anything, you know. I really, he was like my Lord and Savior. I'm sure he was your Lord and Savior as well, you know. So you used to play with him in CLG. People actually don't know this, and I hope I'm not really betraying like a confidence here of what you once told me, but I always used to wonder like how that bot lane worked, you know, with Yellow Pete. And I remember you actually told me that you kind of felt guilty because Yellow Pete was actually this really highly mechanically skilled AD carry who just wanted to make plays. He just wanted to win lane. In fact, his motto used to be, let's smash these guys hard. We're going to win this lane all day long. And you used to tell him, you were kind of like the Nif of the team, you know. You were like, no, let's play conservatively. Like, let's just go for CS only. Like, don't trade. Like, don't go for a trade unless it's 100%. Like, come on, I come from Belgium. And in Belgium, it's all about efficiency. And we're not about that crazy stuff, you know. It used to go something like that, right, Krepo?
That pretty much sums it up, yeah.
Okay. So
but I'll gladly be your bastard child in your post-30s drama relationship status just for this one episode, Thorin. Welcome.
Okay. You do look rather young there. You've got your hair slicked back.
Yep. I'm trying to pursue MonteCristo. That's the goal, you know.
I thought you were going with somewhere that you were just trying to pursue MonteCristo. I thought you were going to say like his career or something. This is
his hairstyle. Take his job later. That's
right. He's eventually just going to be my doppelganger. No one will know when the body snatchers come, and he just replaces me.
Exactly.
Well, except Monty, I know for a fact that you usually don't go for like the easy pun, so I feel like he'll have to. That'll be the hard part for you, Krepo, to stay out of that minefield of knowing that the easy joke's there. It'll be sort of like the end of like the Great Escape, where he's trying to just get away without being noticed that he's not actually like a German soldier. Like I think he might give it away at the last second. You'll say something, you'll be like, oh, I guess for Curse that was especially good. What they just did, and they'll be like, it's not Monty, it's an imposter. So I feel like you might get given away on that one. Right, our first topic, speaking of Worlds, which is obviously my favourite tournament. It's much better than watching OGN because I love to watch TSM play against Koreans. Speaking of Worlds, which you were both on the broadcast for, we recently had the numbers released for what the total amount watching Worlds was. And unfortunately, we've hit this awkward point in League of Legends, which every other game experiences eventually, which is that while the numbers go up and up and up and up and up, and they're always like increasing year on year on year, people feel like, oh, things are going great, you know, like the game's going to get bigger. And also they always project further, you know, like if they go up 2 million this year, they'll be, oh, next year it'll be up 5 million. You know, they want to believe it'll get bigger and bigger like that. But based on these numbers, as far as I can tell, the numbers went down or something, right? What can you tell us, Monty?
Not exactly true. So the number of unique viewers went down over the course of the actual finals itself from 32 million to 27 million. So the number of unique viewers dropped. However, the number of peak concurrent viewers went up.
Like
so
3 million, right?
By about 3.5 million, actually. No, 2.5 million. I can't math. 2.5 million. So they went up from 8.7 to 11.2. So just for people who don't understand that, a unique view is one person who accesses the stream at any given point. So that went down by 5 million, but the number of people watching simultaneously went up by 2.5 million at the peak. Also, the number of minutes watched by the average viewer went up, and
by a significant amount, at least.
By like, what is it? It went from 42 minutes to 67 minutes, indeed. And over the entire tournament, there were 288 million unique daily impressions, meaning that 200 people tuned into the entirety of Worlds. So we were just talking about the finals, the World Finals before, and now we're talking about over the whole tournament. I mean, these are vast numbers. And what's funny to me is that Polygon just released an article, and I usually really like Polygon, but they spin it as a roughly 15% drop in viewership. But what's really interesting to me is they try and put it into perspective in terms of American sports. And they say it is still less than a third of the viewers attracted by last year's most watched sporting event in America, the Super Bowl, at 108.69 million viewers. And that means that the League of Legends Championship Finals would tie for the 20th spot on the list. And by the way, I have this open right now. All 20 spots are NFL games, all of them, in terms of sports viewership in America. So if we think about it in perspective, all NFL games have a stadium and large viewership. The fact that we're even getting into the top 20 games or the top 20 sporting events in America numbers is pretty huge. And so I find it odd that Polygon's like trying to spin it this way when for me, like that's pretty big when you include NFL
So
playoffs.
basically, if you take the NFL games and just call them all one sport, then how high up would it have been? Like 5th or something? Would it actually be quite high in terms of just sports?
No, all 20 of the top 20 most viewed are NFL. Okay. It would be second.
So basically, you think
the first thing that comes up, the first thing that's not NFL, is the NCAA basketball BCS championship finals at 27. The NBA finals are at 29, and this would have been at 20.
And by the way, if people are wondering,
that's really big.
If people are wondering for like NCAA, etc., which is just college basketball, for stuff like that, and definitely the NFL, you have to realize the numbers should be way higher for that because people fucking bet money on those games. There's not many people betting money on like the League of Legends World Cup. People, like just random people to make it more fun, put money on it. So it's going to be even more viewership. As you can see, that's a thing in CSGO now where we can bet things on it. So it increased the viewership immediately, you know.
Right. And also, to put this in perspective, the first NBA game that was 29th on this list was Game 7 between the Heat and the Spurs. So this was like, I mean, we knew that this was going to be a blowout in the finals for League of Legends. I mean, it was pretty obvious. This is talking about an NBA game that was down to the wire. Game 7 in a very close NBA finals would still have been 9 spots lower in terms of U.S. viewership. Obviously, global viewership is probably more for these. These are just U.S. numbers. But the point I'm trying to make, and that Polygon tries to downplay this for whatever reason, but considering that all of these events are played in stadiums above it, and these NFL stadiums are between 55 and 75,000 attendance, I still think that given the scope of what was going on, this is pretty impressive that we're even like cracking top 20.
So obviously, the way when you said it, like they tried to spin it that way, just as a guess, I would say the reason they did that is to have it. Okay, everyone's now done a million stories that are like esports is the new thing. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So this is a way to stand out. Is you do the opposite story. You do like, oh, esports was just a fad. Like it was big for a while, but it's tapered off now. You know, maybe it won't be the biggest thing. Krepo, if you just as someone who's been around League of Legends from like the early days, and I mean you. Okay, you weren't at the DreamHack one, but all the ones in Season 2 onwards, you've been at all these different tournaments. You've seen, like, it got from quite small tournaments to, like, huge ones, obviously. If, for some reason, it turned out that the overall viewership was somehow lower than, say, last year's numbers, would it actually be a problem? Would you see that as some kind of issue?
I think the biggest curse to it all was the immense, like, ridiculous jump it made from Season 2 to Season 3. Like, that was huge. Like, the way both in production quality, viewership, and just, like, professionalism, the things that changed in one season was almost like too big of a leap, I feel. Imagine if we hit these numbers right now with a slightly lower Season 3 numbers, everybody would be ecstatic. Be like, oh my god, esports is growing, esports is so nice. But I think right now we're refining the process rather than just like constantly growing. And I think Riot can be happy with those numbers, especially the fact that the average viewership went up from like 40 minutes to 67. That means people tune in on average for an hour and 10 minutes. That's like like not a movie just yet, but it's getting close, and that's a long time.
And not only that, you have to count in the people who just tuned into the stream for 1 minute or 5 minutes and then turned it off. And that drags the average like way down, right? And also the fact that the concurrent viewership went up means that the fans are more dedicated this year and that the actual hardcore esports fan base is really growing. And so there are just more people watching it at any given time and watching it for longer. So I really don't see a problem with these numbers per se, and it doesn't really worry me in any manner whatsoever.
No, I like the way you got to that, Monty. What I think we should actually summarize this by saying is that, yeah, the fans have just shown us that they're more dedicated. If anything, it's all about the fans, Monty. Like, salute to the fans, the people who make this all possible. If it wasn't for you guys fighting in Iraq, like, we wouldn't have the freedom to... Oh, sorry, I got my rhetoric mixed up again. It sometimes happens, yeah. What were you going to say, Krepo?
I was just going to say, the only thing I disagree is, like, people are like, yeah, the viewership is 4 million or 5 million lower on, like, uniques. Must have been because it's a bad time for America. I don't know, kids. I mean, I love all the American fans, but it's going to be a bad time.
But isn't that right, Krepo? Isn't the reason why the viewership went down because TSM didn't want it?
It's gonna be one region's gonna be left out, right, in the time zone, and like as far as I know, China is, well, not even as far as I know, China is by far the biggest viewership. By far the big, and I think Europe is bigger than America in terms of like raw.
In a lot of senses, really,
player
but yeah, just in terms of people watching, yeah, I agree.
Yes, you can leave your metaphors for later, but
in terms of player base, EU West is bigger than NA, and that's just EU West. That's not even counting EU Northeast. Yeah. NA is smaller in terms of player base on the server, is smaller than EU West, Korea, and China.
And wait, think Korea as well? Holy shit!
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Fancy that. So we have an excuse that NA is weaker than Korea. We have less players, and half of them are more ping.
Did you hear the way in that he said that, Monty? He said we have an excuse that NA is. Oh, okay. You've actually, the trade's been official. Then you are now officially American, Krepo. Like, we don't have to think of you as European. We've been trying to get rid of you for a while. Like,
call me an exempt non-resident.
If they send us special, like, we will do the deal. Like, we'll trade nationalities. You can go to a nice like American Asian family. You know, it'll be great for you.
So anyway, the point is that, yes, I agree with you, Krepo. These numbers, when people say that, and also you have to consider the fact that probably the two regions with the highest viewership, Korea and China, because it's on TV in Korea, and Korea has a history of watching esports for over a decade. These are let's pretend a Chinese team wasn't in the finals. Now there, we would probably see a large drop in viewership, right? The fact that we've had 2 years in a row of a Korea-China finals is probably the single best thing for viewership that could happen. And, you know, things will go up, things will go down depending on the matchup. Also, I think if we had had a longer, more exciting finals, then we could have had more viewers than last.
So what you're saying, Monty?
Prediction, Monty.
Yeah, okay. Go on, Krepo.
There's going to be another Chinese team in the finals next year.
So what you're saying, Monty,
it has to be majority Chinese.
Is if we ever get to a year where the final is EU versus EU, we should expect these numbers to plummet, like for all reasons, basically across the board. That's why there's that secret agenda out there that things must happen to European teams. You know, players must be like banned from being a coach, and like it's all for the good of the realm, Monty. It's like, you know, like Riot isn't evil. They're just like Varys from Game of Thrones. Like everything they do, it may appear capricious and evil, but it's for the good of the realm, Monty. Just serve the realm, who secretly is their bank account. But anyway, aside from that, yeah, what were you going to say, Monty?
I'm just saying that I think that if you have to go the way of it being bad for viewership in one region, it makes the most sense for it to be bad for NA purely from a time zone perspective. Because you also have to remember that in Asia, you're not only just catering to the Chinese and Korean fans, but all of Southeast Asia, all those fans as well. It's just a more populous region.
I don't know the Brazilian market though. That's the only thing we haven't really like Southern America.
True. How
big that is.
That's true.
We keep forgetting that.
Yeah,
that's getting
big. That's probably pretty substantial. I agree with you. But I do think if you have to leave a region out, the region that should never be left out in terms of viewership, in terms of time zone, is Asia.
Is Krepo going to like fucking Pain Gaming or something? Why would he even bring that up there? He's like, hey Monty, if we're talking about great fans, don't leave out the Brazilians. It's a burgeoning market. I believe they've got a strong future ahead of them. Like tomorrow, it's like support of Pain Gaming signed Krepo.
Well, I'm not in Alliance, so might as well go to Kaboom, right?
Oh yeah. Well, if you can't beat him, just join the team who does beat him. Yeah. That's the way you do it. Okay. Actually, that's the final note I'd say on all this. Listen, guys, don't get depressed that the viewing figures went down. Don't feel like, you know, you let us all down, like you weren't even watching this games. As usual, what we do is irrelevant, thanks to Monty's numbers here. Some really talented Asian people who en masse will defeat us anyway, will like carry the banner, and they will make the viewing numbers higher. So just put all your faith in China and Korea. In fact, maybe that's the approach. Maybe we can import some Chinese and Korean fans into the West, just so that then the numbers show higher from our region. Like, I've realized the approach. Like, it works in every single area, Monty. We need coaches, we need fans. Eventually, well, eventually we'll even have hosts for this show. Like, the whole thing will be done in subtitles. Then it'll be politically totally correct. It'll be accurate. No one will watch it, of course, because, again, we'll have actually gone in full circle then. Because it'll only be Asian people on the show, then the viewing figures in the West will drop. But the viewing figures in China will rise. Therefore, what we'll have to do then is import a show from China. You see where I'm going here, Monty? It's a circle. It's all circular. Time is circular, my friend. So anyway, let's
Did you
talk.
go see Interstellar or something, Thorin?
Yeah, I did. In many ways, Krepo, my whole career in this show, like I told Monty, I'm not even real, you know. I'm like an etheric, like... presence. And this whole show has been me trying to get a message through to Monty about his life and the direction he has to change in it to save the world. But I can only do it by making crude and possibly inappropriate jokes about current NALCS pro players. And it's hard, you know. It's hard to make those jokes that could really cause a shift in Monty's consciousness. But I feel like I'm gradually getting there. You know, I've made him stop being the coach of CLG. Like, I've sort of turned him against Doublelift, not quite, because eventually Doublelift will destroy the whole world. I hope you realise. Like, so anyway, let's talk about some actual League of Legends now. Another topic. We'll stay on NA for the moment because, well, I naively thought there's a lot of viewers from NA, but apparently no one in NA watches. So maybe people will just warm up during this part of the show. IEM San Jose is coming up. We've talked a bit about it before, but the fact that Alliance is playing in this tournament means we have a chance to ask Krepo some questions about this. So the first news, which has already been discussed a million times before, but I want to get Krepo's take on it, is that now, Krepo, I've got a secret for you. Apparently, this guy called Rekkles has joined with Alliance. I know you didn't see it coming. It's probably out of the blue. You knew he was going to stay with Fnatic all his career. Like, he loves those guys. They're his best friends. There's photographic evidence of this, Krepo. You can't deny it. He loves them. Specca is like a brother to him. You know, that's the team he always wanted to be in since, like, season 0. Before he actually even found League of Legends, he wanted to be in Fnatic. And so now that he's in his dream team, his boyhood dream, as it were, he would never leave them. And he would definitely not leave to Alliance because, listen, you probably don't know this, but Fnatic actually put a clause in the contract where if you want to sign Rekkles, you have to chop your own balls off. So that's never going to happen. Don't worry about that. That's not, you know, oh, wait a minute. Breaking news. Rekkles has just signed with Alliance, and that's it, as you thought. Okay, so react to the news, Krepo. Are you shocked? What do you think?
I'm baffled. Absolutely baffled. Flabbergasted as much. No, the one thing I think there's a lot of interesting things about Rekkles joining. A lot of the backlash people give him, especially like Fnatic hardcore fans. I mean, I get you're upset that player's leaving, but they're like, oh my god, Fnatic took care of Rekkles when he was nobody, you know. They took him off the streets, they gave him a place to play, you know. So altruistic of Fnatic to pick up the most brilliant amateur talent that was undoubtedly going to be top 3 AD carry EU one day. Oh, so selfless of them to contract him for probably what's been mediocre pay, put him in a gaming house and just cultivate that talent.
Wow, shots fired. Mediocre pay. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what he was paid, so I'm just guessing.
Okay.
I'm not
putting the burdens on Fnatic there. Okay, there's another team off your list, Krepo. You definitely don't join Fnatic. I mean, you were anyway because Yellow Star's person, but we'll leave that aside.
Money,
okay.
Without LCS money, I don't see how you.
Oh, okay. Without LCS money. Yeah. Oh, I understand, Krepo. My bad. I forgot that you were like an EG/former CLG player. So to you, the LCS money is just like pocket change that they chuck in at the end. And you're like, oh, is that my royalties or something? Your real salary is like, yes, send me the stacks of cash. That's what I'm about. Do you know who I am? I'm not Snoopy. I'm Krepo. Send me the money. That's all I want. You know.
Yes.
Okay, keep going. Okay. So what did you actually think of the move in terms of the team then?
Aside from that, I think it can be good for Alliance. I mean, it's hard to look at this like super objectively because I know a lot like what goes on behind the scenes. But like if you look at Alliance, obviously didn't get along too well with Tabzz apparently. So there was a shift to like in how people like each other there. Tabzz kind of wanted out, so they got Rekkles. I think he's a really good player. I think he still needs a lot of guidance though. I really like Martin. He's like a little brother to me. So like I always try to help him.
Okay, that's interesting there, Krepo, because when you say, I noticed you didn't just say, like you'd been saying there, he was a great amateur talent, he was obviously going to be top tier. He's obviously very highly touted. There's people who think he's the best Western player, you know. If all that's true, and no one's been talking about Tabzz as the best Western player, no one's been saying he's the best by far AD carrying the West, all these things. Why didn't you immediately say like, oh, this will be an upgrade, the team will definitely get better? What's holding you back from being so confident in that sense?
Because I don't know how he's gonna play. I don't know if he's gonna. So right now he's laning with If. I don't know if they're gonna like win their lane hard enough. I don't know if you know, everybody's like Alliance has this specific style. Maybe Alliance will change their style. You know, maybe other teams will pick up. From playing with him, I know he's just a really secure player, but he ramps up slowly. I feel, so he takes his time to ramp up. Maybe that's too much. I feel like Tabzz played a little more aggressive in a few games we played, but it's so hard to judge, you know, because I've only played with these players in a couple duo queue games in solo queue, and I haven't watched their matches in depth enough to like see behavioral patterns or whatever. So you can never know what's gonna happen. All I know is he's at least even as a replacement, in my opinion. But he needs guidance. Yeah. He's a young player. I hate it when I saw Rekkles be like, yeah, I'm gonna play 18 hours a day, and I'm cutting 2 hours out of my sleep to play even more. and I'm not going to communicate with my fans. I mean, the kid even started smoking just to deal with the pressure. I'm like, come on. He quit, obviously. That's
Okay.
the big thing. He literally, like, I don't know. I hope I don't betray his trust by saying this, but he started smoking just to deal with the stress, and he quit right after Worlds. So
Okay.
props to him for quitting immediately. But, like, I feel he needs to train efficiently, and I really hope Alliance takes care of that. Like, don't let him burn out playing 18 hours a day, because it's not going to do you shit. And, yeah, but I think he has a lot of talent, and he has a lot of say uncultivated talent. I think they can work on his weak areas, and he can literally be the best AD carry in Europe, 100%.
Okay, before I bring Monty in, I just want to say something, okay? I hope at this point in time, you're not actually pulling a Loco Doco. And pulling a Loco Doco, to explain for everyone, is where you come on the show and you pretend like you're giving really honest opinions. Like, I'm just being really honest here. But actually, you're sort of saying things that, like, advertise you for a job, etc. And so you're not sort of saying, like, listen, this Rekkles guy, he's very talented. Like, I played with him, and when I played with him, like, he seemed to unlock a lot of that potential. He's very aggressive. I'm not sure how he'll do with Nif. Like, maybe he'll do, like, take a while to build it together there. But I mean, you know, hypothetically, I mean, I know if I was to play with him, we'd probably figure out, like, he'd probably become the best AD carry in the whole world, if I'm being honest. You know, probably like Uzi I times 10. But I don't know if I will be playing. I mean, I don't know if that will happen in his career. You know, like, I hope for him that it really does, and that he gets the right synergy with whoever his support might be in Alliance. Like, I don't know who that could be. Yeah, I just wondered, was there any of that growing on there, Krepo? What were you hinting at?
I don't know what
there?
you're talking about there, Duncan.
Okay. but actually, along those lines, to go the other way and ask you a little bit, we'll talk about this later, but just since now we're talking about Rekkles replacing Tabzz, can I ask you, in terms of how Tabzz played before, I don't believe I'm betraying any confidence here. I think you've said as much or hinted as much in interviews before. When the super team was going on and they were trying all those different players out, you played some scrims with them, or maybe you were even trying out to potentially have a spot on that?
Froggen's super team? No, I was never listed on that. That was Froggen going on his own.
Okay, you were never any part of that?
I never even scrimmed part of that.
Okay. Never mind.
I think rightfully so at the time, because that was right after season 3, and I, like, have no problems admitting that. Like, I was pretty shit. I didn't practice efficiently. I had no idea how to practice efficiently, and that's why I don't blame Froggen. You know, in hindsight, sure, at first you're like pissed at your teammates going on a different route. Monty looks like he's seen a spooky ghost. I imagine that's not my story. But yeah, like, no, I wasn't part of that at that point. But I don't blame Froggen for that. I think it was rightfully so, going his own way at that point.
So, Monty, I know I've asked you this topic before, but now it's actually happened. Now Rekkles has officially joined Alliance. What are your senses for it? Like, do you have like optimism that this can make them a better team?
I mean, I think it's a pretty, at this point in time, I think it's just kind of a whatever kind of trade. I mean, I don't see it as an immediate benefit in any capacity, unless Tabzz' attitude was so contrary to what the rest of the team wanted that they felt it was significantly holding back their growth and development as a team. But as a skill upgrade, for me, it's just kind of a wash, really. I think Tabzz is a very strong player. I think Rekkles' upside is higher, but Tabzz had the experience in terms of the established synergy with the team. Maybe a slight improvement, but not by any means an earth-shattering one, I don't think.
Do you think Alliance's problems, like, can be solved by any talent, though? I feel like a lot of it rests more on the team play and the way they approach the game.
Yeah, but okay, let me ask you this thing, Krepo. Doesn't the team... If I look at their team, I don't get the sense that they ever sat down and said, we're going to play this way, it's going to be like this. I get the sense that they really did just scrim, and this was naturally, if you put those personalities of players together, especially stemming from Froggen initially, but then people like Nif as well, you'll get that sort of a more passive style, and they'll just try to win by the small margins. You really think that they can they really just decide, right, we're going to be an aggressive team, or we're going to be like a pick-based team, or we're going to be try and dominate this late? Like, can they really change in that way, do you think?
I don't know. I think they can, but they need to realize it. Like, you need to hit your head in the wall before you change a lot. I've had that a couple of times during, like, my career, where I look back. Like, if I look back right now, the way I played, say, mid-season 3, I'd be like, well, yeah, no shit, you were horrible. Like, you didn't think about X, you didn't think about Y. You always did the same thing over and over again. And maybe, maybe they hit their head in the wall and they get this epiphany and they look at the game differently. Patch change, something else changes. So yeah, it's possible that they on their own with that lineup change their style. But I think remember, they still finished first in Europe.
Sure. And they still had good results in Korea, etc. But I think for the Alliance, okay, here's the question to ask then, Krepo. One of the problems I always had with the criticism of Alliance's Worlds results is, I even said this at the time, when you looked at the games they won, they were winning, but the same problems were present that what would manifest in the games they lost, okay? So even in some of the games they won, they would win in such a clean way that it could produce the perfect game, but it also, the same game, they were heading that way and then they lost it in the same fashion, because when it got to the part where they could have like really applied the hammer and just destroyed the other team, they would still kind of leave a bit of breathing room for the other team. They'd give it a few chances to get back in the game because they never were that much committed to it, you know. So can they improve without losing the upside? Is that a concern at all?
If they get a good analyst and coach, yeah, why not? If you can already play the game near a perfect level, but then you don't push through enough, you know, then that means you're making a mistake, right? You're putting the wrong tempo at the wrong stage of the game.
Yeah.
Like if you need to recognize, like, okay, we're this far ahead, guys, we're gonna switch gears from like 3rd to 5th and just plow through and finish this game. If you need a coach, basically, or like an analyst, a really good analyst that can just like objectively watch a game and be like, okay, I don't care what your reasoning is here. I understand everybody has a motive to make a move they do, right? That's the problem. Like, if you talk to players, they'll be like, yeah, but you don't understand. I made this move because I had this information, and I made this move thinking this, and therefore I'm right. That's the thing. Everybody's right all the time. It just...
No, I've had those conversations with Wicked before.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I have that too in the past. I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. You know, I went for that roam. I wanted that ward here. Like, yo, it's airtight. It's legit. But then you need to take a step back and look at it objectively. You can be right, but still wrong at the same time. And they need somebody like that's really smart that can break that game down. And this is not me pulling a Lokodoku, because I don't think I'm smart enough to do that.
Okay, yeah.
Or do I want to do that? But there are some people out there, some analysts eventually, that can just objectively look at a game that haven't even played the game. So they won't be making that rationale of I know why a player is doing X and Y. They just see, okay, you guys are 10k gold ahead. I want to see some stuff going down. You know, I want that tower to go down. I want them to basically get no chance to get back into the game. And maybe if they get that, sure, they can get even better.
I disagree. I think that if you moved away from playing and spent more time watching film, you could absolutely do that. But in terms of this, I mean, in this conversation about Tabzz also is coming out of, for those of you who don't know, Thorin's vlog on Tabzz, and kind of the criticism that I do think is also relatively unfair that he received, but also the owner of Alliance, Jacob,
Mailk.
commented, Mailk is his ID. He commented in that thread saying that they had asked you to be a coach for them.
Head coach, I believe he even said.
Head coach. So
when was that? Was that now? Was that at the beginning before EG?
So TLDR from what happened. So I left EG, went free agent, had a couple offers from like teams, had a couple offers from coach as well, because people.
Okay. That Copenhagen Wolves offer wasn't tempting.
I've been I can't disclose any offers.
Okay, H2K, my bad. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, okay. But so yeah, I talked to Alliance obviously, and I think I held off on a lot of offers because at one point, I don't want to get into details. Like, I believed I could be a support on Alliance, okay, but at the same time they wanted me as a coach as well.
Yeah. And
well, obviously, eventually they stuck with Nif, right? And that kind of, well, that's a different story.
Can we get into that for a second though before we go to the coach part? So that was an interesting statement. Listen, that was actually a very fair way you said it. You said, I believed I could be a support on Alliance. Now listen, some people believe they're Napoleon. And I don't even doubt them. Listen, I'm sure that they really do. They're wearing that hat for a reason. And they think that it's France in sort of like that era of time, you know, with like Louis the 17th or whatever. But if the rest of the people around the world look at them and go, you're not Napoleon, then they have to take it into account at least. They have to maybe question, maybe they're not Napoleon. Yeah. I know it's going to be hard because they feel Napoleon-ish, but when you say you believed you could be, what was driving this? Like, what were you thinking when you said that? Is it just your level of play now? Is it what you think you'd be able to do in that team? So, what was the emphasis here?
So I actually agree with the Napoleon rant, how weird it sounds, because it's always hard for me to judge whether I'm being... I try to be unbiased in a lot of things, but I realize I can never be unbiased about myself, you know?
Sure, yeah.
Either I'll underrate myself or overrate myself or think I'm like this like hot shit. But what I think about Alliance, like when I watched Worlds, I felt all EU supports except maybe Bora did poorly.
Yellow Star, for anyone who doesn't know his name, yeah.
Yeah. I think Unrated and Nif underperformed.
I totally agree with that.
Will I say I would have performed better? No, of course I can't know. But like watching that, I was like, well, they're making mistakes that I feel I wouldn't make. Mostly like build paths and stuff, and like just champion pools.
Yeah.
So coming back, I was like looking at what NIF had done. I know they're getting Martin, Rekkles. I know I like the kid, so I know I can work with people. For me, my mentality is bot lane is 1 + 1 = 3. You both bring something to the table, and then you communicate a lot, and you make that even better.
Yeah. I think Doublelift's mentality is 1 + 0 = 10.
Yeah, exactly.
keep going.
But yeah, just judging from that, and judging from Tabzz' post saying, okay, there was communication issues, nobody was talking, both support and jungler weren't talking. If there's anything I'm good at, it's talking too much. So all that combined.
Okay, wait a second. If there's anything you're good at, it's talking too much. Well, explain that for me for a second. It's an interesting way to phrase it.
I talk a lot during a game, and I feel I even talk too much, and then try to fill the voids of people that aren't talking. I did that in EG as well. Like I just try to constantly feed information here and there. Ask people what they're doing. What are you doing top? What are you doing jungler? What can we do? Setting up a play. It's not shot calling, because shot calling is, hey guys, we're doing this. We're doing this. You go there. I'm more like asking, okay, how's top going? Can you TP? Like how's mid going? Where's the jungler going? What are your plans? Where are you ganking? You know, those are things other people should be saying themselves. But I try to make them say them. Like I try to teach them that they have to feed that information. You know, so in that way, I thought I could help Alliance. And then comparing play between me and If, I think I could be equally good.
Okay, before we get to that, let's bring Monty in here. Well, I want to ask you, Monty. Listen, I know you like Krepo. I know you're friends with him. I know on the last show when this was brought up, you made the statement that I actually went on and you on for you. You said, I think Krepo would be good on Alliance, something along those lines. So, what are your thoughts of if Krepo hypothetically could have been the support of Alliance? What do you think it would do?
Well, I wanted to ask Krepo a question based off of this as well, but. I mean, I think that he would be a strong member of Alliance in terms of just his game knowledge and his ability, his veteran status and his ability to kind of bring about, I think, a more mature atmosphere and quality communication. But my question then is, if you're Alliance and you're saying, well, you know, I have these traits, I could be an analyst, they obviously view you as a valuable asset, as mature, as able to kind of draw the necessary information out of the players. If you're Alliance and they have a choice between NIF and you, but you are capable of being the coach, and NIF is only capable of playing support, but you could do either. From their logic, if they could get both, don't you think that would be the best way forward for them as an org?
Yeah, I agree. That's why they asked me to be a coach. But then again, I don't think I think I can be a good coach one day. I'm not sure if I can be a good coach right now. I think I can be a decent coach. But if I'm sitting here talking about how I think I could possibly replace their support player, could you really have a coach that before that like wants to replace one of your players?
I think Saint Vicious would be a terrible coach. You're absolutely right, Krepo.
That's conflict of interest, right? I don't know. This has gone through my head so many times. Like I don't even sleep much anymore, like because I constantly go through.
Oh, it's Tabzz. We've got another Tabzz on our hands here, Monty. I think he's just got contact dermatitis. I'm touching the mic here. Like,
okay.
Krepo, we're going to support you through this.
No, but like, okay, so you have to think. Do I want to play anymore? Where can I play? You know, should I coach? People want me coaching. Should I cast? Should I like? What do I do? Do I do it now? Do I do it a year from now? So that's like going through my head all the time.
So now we're going to create a straw poll so that people can vote on Krepo's future. Hold on. I'm going to give out the URL.
Can you please put an option in that he should become the coach of CLG? Because I know what I'm going to vote for.
Hey, I want a long-term career in esports, Thorin. Please. You make
but I feel like joining CLG as the coach like builds character, you know.
So okay, we're gonna say pro player. This is gonna be great. Coach of Alliance. Coach of CLG. Because Thorin demands it. We'll put that one at the bottom.
There should be one more option. Since all these Korean players have gone to China now, so technically you don't have to speak Chinese or Korean, there should be the option to replace Mata in whatever team he just joined. That has to be an option, because for all we know, listen, I know that Krepo does better build paths than him. He doesn't rush to Frost's Queen claim.
I never criticized Tabzz, dude. I don't know if you watch Worlds, dude. You don't touch the god.
Okay. He did say at Worlds that Mata must know something that he doesn't. I remember that quite clearly. Okay, so we have pro player, coach of Alliance, and caster. Any other real options?
I think that's about it.
Well, there's other there's other teams that reached out for possible coaching as well, but I don't know if I like. So
Okay.
at first I wanted to look at my options for playing. I'll just be honest here. So like I looked at my options for playing, then I believed I had a real shot of getting to Alliance. Then I actually was convinced I was gonna be that guy. I'm not gonna say how or why. Then that obviously fell through because they're playing with NIF now. And that actually shut the door on a couple other offers. So right now I'm actually unclear as to what I'm gonna do, and it's looking likely that I'll be probably casting next season. But at the same time, if you come to the realization that the last professional match you've ever played was NA relegations, without knowing that was the last match of your career, it kind of stings, you know. So
At least you won.
oh yay, we got into the LCS. Wonderful. So yeah, there's that.
So okay, you did. So I understand your reasoning for you didn't want to be the head coach, but hypothetically, if you were to do coaching, do you think it would actually suit you aside from your desire to play still? So if you could just, if for some reason you didn't want to play anymore, if you just took what you have now and you became a coach, how do you think you would be suited to being a coach?
So I think what I'm decent or good at is that I know the game and I've played it, so I can actually put myself in the player's position, which I think a lot of coaches can't. I've played with them, so I can talk to them properly. Say I had no desire left to play, right? I know the game, so I can talk to analysts. I don't want to be the analyst, but I want to get info fed to me from the analysts, bring that to the team, discuss that with them. And then I just want to make sure we have a healthy team environment, because I feel a lot of people underestimate how important that is, you know. So it'd be silly shit, you know, like Friday evening, take the team for bowling. I don't care. Like, I know Froggen and Rekkles would like to play 6 hours more of League of Legends, but at one point, you know, that's not going to give you more than your team actually getting along with each other. Because if you don't get along with each other, you're not going to if you get upset, you'll shut down. But if you get along with each other and you get upset, then you know your teammates got your back and you'll get back into the game. It'll stop you from tilting. And so it's all those little things that I just had experienced as a player that I can now bring forth. And then obviously I need to get better at the other side of coaching, you know, like scheduling scrim sessions, you know, I don't even know, talking to sponsors if that's even my job. But I'm sure I could learn to do all those things. But yeah, mainly if I would ever be a coach, I'd bring forth my experience as a player, and I would just try to talk as much to people, find out what they want from me as a coach, and then deliver that.
So I have a general question here that isn't specifically about Alliance or Krepo. So when Krepo mentioned there, before we went into him being the coach, he said Alliance could get better in these areas and change their style if they got a good analyst, they got a good coach. Now, the old analyst/coach guy of Alliance, that Leviathan guy we saw, left after Worlds, and I haven't seen anyone announced as officially the new one. In fact, as a general trend, we don't really see, outside of a couple of the NA teams, big signings of right, well, we signed this guy as our coach, and it's a blockbuster name, and this is going to be a big deal. So I've got a question for you, Monty, which is, to me, this is the obvious next step, which is that, yeah, you can bring in Korean talent, really good players. You can bring in foreign talent in general. You can try and upgrade positions, but wouldn't a great step be, in one of these scenarios, get someone okay, you used to be the coach of Samsung or something. We'll sign you to a huge NA org, and you'll just be the head coach, and you'll have a translator and all that. So the idea is you'll input some of your ideas on how to play or something like that. Wouldn't that be a great blockbuster move? Will it ever happen, Monty?
I'm sorry, what was the last part? You cut out.
Will it ever happen that someone would sign a huge Korean coach, and that would be the next big move you could do in a Western team to improve?
Maybe, but you'd probably have to hire a translator too, because none of the Korean coaches speak English.
Okay, sure. So let's say we do that though. If they really have this much knowledge and a good mind for the game, couldn't this have a bigger effect than a player?
Let's talk about this in another sense, because Coach Park, who's one of the most famous StarCraft coaches of all time, who is currently the coach for CJ, I believe.
Yep.
But before that, he was hired for Pro League for the combined EG team Liquid, and they still kind of bottomed out. Now, they didn't have a lot of talent.
Okay, I've got a caveat for that, Monty. Here's the thing. when he joined, they did badly initially, but then first of all, I think they had a different coach initially. Then they signed him and they did badly. But actually, towards the end of their run, they got way better. They went from having like 0 wins or 1 win to having like, they were actually winning games and they were like up in the pack. So my point there would be, yeah, I don't think he had the resources to work with as a team. Because actually in Brood War, and StarCraft 2 rather, there was a secret aspect that fans didn't understand, which was to play in Pro League, you actually needed a B team of players to practice certain matchups and stuff like that. You couldn't just only have the star player, essentially. So there's a weird caveat to that, but I wouldn't say that's like a failure, by the way. I'd say I was going to use that as my example, by the way. It's like he was managed to turn things around in the end because he had the ideas and the way to apply. But anyway, continue.
So yeah, that's just the only example that I think we really have of that. And I do agree that there was some improvement shown, but it wasn't like the big difference that took EGTL from bottom of Pro League to top of Pro League. Sure. But also it was only a single season.
I don't think... Yeah.
Go on, Krepo.
I don't think you should even rule out Western coaches necessarily, because there's been no budget for now. You know, like, who's had a good coach like last season? Yeah, sure, TSM did, because they have money. You know, they can hire somebody full time for that, and all the other coaches are generally paid very little, from what I know. So
I can vouch for that.
Yes, Monty can vouch for that. Therefore, it is known. But like right now, Riot's actually funding more money into the coaching position, and I think that will develop more talent, and then you can see who's average, who's really good, and then that guy can get the Riot money plus maybe some more from an organization once like this entire esport thing gets more saturated.
Let's be real. Like, the thing about it is that Riot money, yes, it will help the coaches out, but even with the Riot money, which is the exact same amount of money that they're giving to the players, is not enough money when the teams need older coaches. They need somebody in the late 20s or early 30s. These are the people that must be hired because they're the ones who are mature enough to control the teams effectively. And I think that the teams who get these older coaches will be the ones that are most successful. To convince somebody in that position to leave their job and all in a very unstable environment costs more than $12,500 every 6 months, where your LCS team can go out the door.
Yeah,
there's
obviously
you need no way. Yeah, you need a lot more. A lot.
So here's why, Krepo. Oh, go on.
Yeah, to get the good guys, but I mean, like, say you blow your entire your medium level org, and you blow your entire coaching budget, which is $25K for 2 splits plus the additional 12 and a half. That's 37.5K. Say you manage to convince a sponsor to get you another 12K. That's 50K. You can get.
Yeah, we're talking.
I'm not saying
like
you can get 28-year-old super experienced coach. No, but your organization might try well with taking a risk on a younger person that's really motivated, doesn't know what to do in life, but has really good coaching capabilities. Maybe he was like all his life coached fucking soccer players. I don't know, because that can already help. Because a lot of people have nothing. You know, you need to compare to what they have right now. You can't go from 0 to park in 1 year. You know.
Yeah,
why not?
I've been the biggest advocate of that. I've been the one where when all the pro players say, "Oh, there's just nobody out there," I'm like, "Well, you have to take a risk." Because there will never be coaches until people start taking risks. Like, I am all about taking risks. I'm just saying that I'm not saying it's against taking risks. I'm just saying there's a big difference between a 22-year-old who's the same level as the player and a 32-year-old who I think could do better work. And that's the problem, is taking a risk on a 32-year-old is just more expensive, period.
So here's the thing, Krepo. This might surprise you, but this is one area where I actually have some direct insight that you guys don't have. And this is going to blow your mind, okay? The reason why I asked that question of why, especially teams with a lot of money, wouldn't take the risk and get a blockbuster name, you know, like if you actually did get the Samsung coach, one who clearly had some sort of impact on the strategies because the two teams had a similar style and they were able to do these things. Okay, if you could get a blockbuster name, the reason why I mention it is kind of what you're saying. At the moment, some of these teams have nothing. It's not that they're going, right, well, no, but we could get this American guy who's pretty good, so we won't have the problems of the translation. Some of them don't even have a coach, still don't have a coach. And here's what's going to blow your mind. The reason I know that they don't have coaches and that the talent level is so low for coach, as in there's not even names out there, is that, this is no exaggeration, I'm not going to reveal names, but I had 2 LCS teams in LCS literally reach out to me and ask me if I was interested in being their head coach. As in for real, I would move there, I'd become their coach, I would be the... And they weren't doing it because I know lots of legal. I mean, obviously I could get an analyst and that sort of thing. It was more along the lines of like, well, you're like an older guy who knows the business. Sort of. So if they're coming to me, Krepo, in this scenario, and then when I said like, obviously I don't want to do that, they would then be like, I would say to them, well, do you have any other names in the pool? Because obviously I secretly hope they'd say some good name, and I'd go, no, just get that guy instead, so it'd make it easier. A lot of them would be like, no, we don't really have anyone else. We don't really have anyone else out there. And I'd be like, what do you mean? And they'd be like, I don't know, we'll probably just get a coach last minute, like someone who we don't know. And it was depressing when I heard it, because I thought to myself, essentially, it's like both aspects. They're not willing to go for the big money and get the Korean guy, but at the same time, they're also not really willing to consider the idea there could be a guy who's a total unknown. It's like they're not willing to give up. They want something that's a known quantity, but there isn't anything.
It's really hard though, because we grew up without coaches. Sorry for interrupting him. Like season 2, we went to Korea as CLG.EU, and we saw all those Korean teams like, yeah, you don't need a coach. CLG.EU is doing just fine with the 5 of us, And every team started every successful team in league in the Western scene started without a coach, and that's what makes it really hard. Because now we had to take 3 years to convince teams that they need a coach. Korea started with the system of, hey, you're a team, this is your coach, listen to that guy. And I feel that that's really a distinct difference.
It's also cultural. Yeah. They like culturally, the culture is that they have to listen to people who are older than they are, and they have to respect them. So inherently, anybody who's placed into the house who is older is going to command more authority. There's no earning respect. It's just there.
It's there, yeah.
It's it.
Well, there's also a principle, Monty, that maybe you can speak to as someone who's worked in a Korean company, that I think if I explain this even briefly, it'll help people understand why coaching culture will always be different there. In Korean culture, if your boss tells you something, unless he specifically asks you, do you have a suggestion or what's your opinion on this? You don't say to him, oh, like, yeah, I'll do that, but I don't think that's a good idea, and like I think we should do it this way. So you would never, as a Korean person, you would never say that. That is considered really disrespectful, because essentially you're sort of saying to that guy like, well, I can do your job better than you, or like you're not doing, it carries all these implications that in the West it wouldn't, like if a player in one of your teams, Monty, said, oh, I think we shouldn't do it that way, it probably isn't even that big a deal. You can have the discussion, and then it might still convince the guy to do it your way anyway. But that alone is kind of off the table. What do you think on this topic, Monty?
I don't know the environment within every team, and from working with OGN, I would say that OGN is generally quite liberal for a Korean company, and that you have more freedom to do that. But I would say in general, what you're saying is definitely trending more towards true. And so I don't know how it would exist in the team houses, but yeah. Also, I get treated differently because I'm not Korean, so I don't know if when I have meetings with them, when I offer a suggestion, they just humor me by listening to it, or whether they actually listen to it. It's really hard to tell.
They just ha. American Joe comes with his ideas. We tell him he is good, but he is just voice.
No, OGN is really cool, actually. Okay. But I think they tend to be more collaborative than most, and more like liberal and westernized than most other Korean companies would be.
Did you see that video that someone put out recently where it was like they'd collected all those famous trash talk segments from OGN into one video, and it was from like all over the years?
No, that sounds amazing.
It was good. So they had that segment right from before the OGN summer final, the one where Katie Bullets played SK Telecom, and they had a section in there that has Ryu in, which is hilarious. So I imagine the same reaction that Ryu had was kind of like what they had when you would suggest something and then you would leave the room, okay? Because in this section, okay, one of them, I think it's Pumandu, makes a really lame joke that because it's the telecommunications war of KT versus SKT, that like, okay, KT's going to be going at this speed, but we're going to be going at LTE speed or something. And then when they relay this like bad joke to Ryu goes, Lily? And just like leans forwards in this like hilarious, it's one of the funniest, like first of all, not only make a gif out of that, but make a gif where it's side by side, me doing the impression synced up with him doing it, and let's see who did it better. Okay, I want to 1v1 Ryu and beat him at his own impression, and just so I can feel like I was actually we'll get to Ryu later. Unfortunately, that guy rip. Okay, so we've done the coaching aspect. Do you have anything else to add on that?
I have to add that officially the Krepo Fate poll is up. It is at tinyurl.com/Krepo decides.
I'll put an annotation on the screen if you send me the link.
tinyurl.com/Krepo decides, and that will lead you. that will lead you to
over these sides.
And much like President Obama, whatever the people vote for is what Krepo will do. There's no chance that he will go back on his word. He will betray his campaign promises. He will do exactly what is said on this poll, and he is now committed to that.
Fuck
Personally,
you,
I'm going to try and sway the people to the, as we decide what to do with Krepo. There are many things that we could do with him. I forgot to put professional fat streamer on there, like get fat with Krepo. Just becomes your entire life. Like you dedicate yourself to never ever moving.
Food review?
Yeah, food review. Just like while you stream League of Legends, like simultaneously, just like professional streamer and food connoisseur. But I want him to be a caster, number one, because I love you and I want to keep working with you, but because I'm very concerned about the financial stability of your future as you age. And I think that moving into casting right now will ensure that you have a long, healthy career in esports. And I think that playing more is dumb.
Wow, Monty,
that
so eloquent.
bombshell.
Thank you for calling me dumb.
Not calling you dumb. I'm calling the decision dumb. There's a difference.
You know what I'm hoping for now, Krepo? I'm secretly now pulling for the fact that you get onto a team, just so people can always link back to that moment where Monty's like, and to play now would just be dumb. And then they'll link that forevermore.
And then you have a highlight clip of all my missed hooks, binds, and suicides, and face checks.
Or all your missed ones. No, I'm not saying this because I think you're a bad player. Quite the contrary. I think you're a good player, but I think that you have a perfect opportunity to transition into a glorious casting career
also,
right now.
We need to bring this full circle, the joke, Krepo, because now I need to take the clip of you saying that you're going to be better than Nif in Alliance, and then take it to Nif, and then he's like, "Really?" Like, that's the way, that's the way it goes. Okay, that's the way it goes. Okay, so let's get into the Tabzz issue so we can get all the Alliance stuff in one. Okay, so essentially what happened was, in general, Tabzz, throughout his career, I've noticed this happen, okay? Every time he's been a very public figure, okay? If you ever asked him questions on his Ask FM or even on Twitter, he's often the guy, actually, who'd just respond straight up, and he wouldn't even answer in any kind of PR manner. He would just say pretty much what he thought, to a degree that he could. And so, in the past, I remember there was like a minor amount of criticism because he'd said stuff about, like, he essentially described Lemon Dogs' Worlds trip, and it made it sound like, okay, maybe they didn't actually maybe they didn't really commit to the idea, and some of them maybe thought that they were going to go out in the Brout stage, and they were kind of happy just to be there. Okay, there could be some truth to that. But going forwards, when it was announced that he wouldn't be the AD carry of Alliance, I think technically they put him on the bench first or something, but it was pretty obvious. I mean, I hate to sound like I was a prognosticator here, but it was pretty obvious that Rekkles was going to replace him and he was going to leave, and that whole situation, the wheels were in motion, okay? So when this happened, the public, and obviously some people on one of the shows that's out there, First Blood, which is another talk show, go watch it if you want, guys. It's got some other celebrity names on it, and they talk about League of Legends, but in a different way than we do, so it's a good show. When they addressed this topic, they mentioned some of the things that I have seen as public criticisms as well, which generally you can break down into sort of a few different versions, okay, which usually goes like, Tabzz wasn't as good, therefore obviously makes sense to replace him with Rekkles. He wasn't committed because he openly said I only practice 6 to 8. I only want to practice 6 to 8 hours a day. I get burned out after that. And then I think the third aspect was they didn't like the idea that he complained about his situation. He said I had all these problems and I couldn't, I was stressed out when I was in Worlds. So if we go through them all one by one, okay. The first one, the idea that Tabzz just wasn't even that good a player. He was a main problem in Alliance, and he wasn't such a good AD carry. What is your thought on this, Krepo?
So the first thing I want to point out is regardless of what we think about Tabzz, a lot of the times people will be like, oh, player X isn't that good because he didn't shine. The only reason he shined is because he wasn't a good team, right? But then the other time, if this is a different player, people are like, yeah, player Y, he really made that team really good, So sometimes the team performance gets given as a compliment, and then sometimes, he gets brought down, yeah, Tabzz isn't really that good. He just got lucky. He was in a really good team. And at the same time, another player from that team will be complimented. Yeah, but he must be good because his team's good, I'll
give you an example.
That's
the contrast of how this can go is Tabzz was obviously doing well. If you look at his numbers and his performance in Europe, he was clearly doing well. So people who don't like him will say, right, well, he was just doing well because he was in Alliance. But meanwhile, if you go and look at someone like Mr. Alice, who was in a much worse team but was considered the good player, people will be like, well, he must be amazing because he's doing well and he's on a bad team. There's the spectrum. And basically, as far as I can tell, it only really matters if you like the person or not. They're not really they're not even comparing directly, They're saying, right, well, even if this guy was losing all these games, I like him because I think he's good and it's not his fault. And if this guy's on a good team but they don't like him, they go, oh, well, what he did didn't even count, like he was carried or people were helping him. I mean, you've been on bad teams and good teams. Have you seen this? Has the public reaction been similar for you?
For me, it depends in which way I'm in the circle jerk. I always go in like I think it was called a Kondratiev, the economical waves, how like economy always goes in the same way, up and down in history. The same way it's for me. Like eventually everybody will suddenly like me, and then because so many people like me, people on Reddit mostly will be like they'll get annoyed, and then suddenly they start hating me, and then it goes quiet for a second, and then everybody likes me again. It even happened in this after period.
The vlog.
Yeah, after the vlog. So people are like, oh yeah, okay, Krepo, really good. Suddenly, yeah, really needs his time to shine. He's really getting better as a player towards the end of the split. Maybe, good player. And then nothing changed, literally, because it's literally a month of silence. And people are like, nah, he's overrated. I don't know why people are talking so good. So the lesson I take from this is you need to take it with a grain of salt. When people are praising you, you take that with a grain of salt. And when people are talking shit, you take that with 2 grains of salt. And if you look objectively at Tabzz, no, he wasn't the weakest member of the team. Necessarily. I don't think anybody's play individually on Alliance was their problem. I think their problem was their team play, the way they approached the game, and I guess strategic decisions. I have no idea what goes on in their team communication. I don't know what their shot calling is like. I don't know what champions picks are preventing them from playing compositions differently. Because, you might be really good on this champion, but if your team can't play the composition out perfectly, or you can't find whatever picks that work with it, you have no idea what's going on within a team. But like objectively speaking, no, Tabzz wasn't an issue. What disturbed me the most is that people were getting upset about Tabzz, what he was saying, and I like a lot of things he says. A lot of pro players go through. So many pro players burn out. They just don't always tell you. So many pro players have these issues where they're like tired or like it happens to every one of them. The problem is just like whether you share it or not. And then what matters the most is the manner you share it in. I think Tabzz was just not dumb, but just like young and naive and oversharing because he wanted to have his persona to be truthful and straight up with the community and be like, hey, I'm not going to be a PR bullshit person, like that Krepo guy.
I respect him for that too, though. And like that's what's so stupid about this whole situation is the community is simultaneously demanding that people be this way and then shitting on them when they are. And Tabzz didn't even say anything bad. I can try to remember I ever thought Tabzz said anything bad.
You can just tell that the community will get upset. That's the thing.
I just felt like he was respectfully honest. Like that's how I would categorize Tabzz' post. I didn't even agree with everything he said, especially about the game at times, but it didn't matter. I didn't get angry over it.
Put it this way, I've got an example for you on this show, Monty. When Krepo made his blog outlining his problems in EG, which we can get some of that later, but just as a general example now, he actually said like some of the problems and some of his criticisms were quite harsh actually. Like he called certain people out and said that they'd done X and Y or they hadn't been able to perform in a certain way or they'd had this flaw. I would actually say on surface that Krepo's blog was probably a lot harsher than Tabzz' Ask FM post. Yet, because Krepo's a much more loved character in the community, he has a lot more tenure as a player, etc., Krepo's blog was received really well, actually. The Reddit posts all seemed to be sort of like, oh, it's so great that he's so open and honest with us. And meanwhile, the Tabzz one, there was a lot of vitriol to it, the idea that like, oh, you're just saying that because you're so... In fact, a lot of people who are Lions fans were like, fuck you, you're just salty that they cut you from the team. Like, oh, you're an asshole. Like, why would you say those things to guys who are your friends? Like, we saw here essentially the same sort of scenario. What do you think on this sense, Krepo, comparing it to your blog? What do you think of the issue? Because obviously you outed some things yourself, right?
I agree. Like the thing is, I pride myself in a way that I try to build my brand as well as I can. I always try to I think every player when it comes to branding has a range, and I try to be as high as I can on top of my range. I try to offend as little people, but I still want to be truthful. But that's why I think a lot about how I want to say things. And I think that's just a difference. I think if Tabzz took a little more time on how to phrase his stuff and timed them a little better, right? And just tiny things here and there, community backlash would have been so different. And that's what makes it really sad. Because, yeah, I outlined some stuff in that blog, a lot. And if my teammates would have replied, they would have said some things about me that were 100% true as well. And, there's two sides to every story. But it's sad sometimes that it matters more how you phrase things than what you say, because people don't see through it. And that's just the reality of it, you know. But I do spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, like, I have this opinion. Let's sit on it for a day instead of releasing it right now, because the worst thing to do is tweet or post when you're upset or angry, because then you say things in a different way and people can interpret that differently. But yeah, I agree. Tabzz had some criticism, decided to air like quote unquote dirty laundry of his team chemistry, but it's always really hard to do that when it's given the impression that, you know, you're the one cut, and then you sound like a salty player, you know, when instead you're trying to just put context to the narrative.
I've got a question for you. If you said, okay, it wasn't like specific individual skill that was the problem in the team, or it wasn't one player that was the problem in the team. With that said, if I created a hypothetical simulation, okay, where you didn't know it was Alliance the team, you could just see the team with no tags on them and you don't know who any of the players are. And so as a result, you're not going to say the name of a player, or you're not even going to say their position. But if you were to look at the team and I said, right, your only option is you have to remove one player from this team in the hopes of changing the team, okay, would it have been the AD carry? You don't have to say which position, but would it have been the AD carry that you'd have removed?
That's a loaded question.
Remember, you don't have to say what position. You just have to say if it would have been another. Like, would there be one that you could remove before the AD carry? I mean, obviously, the AD carry had some issues. We're not denying that, but would there have been a different one beforehand, do you think?
I don't think I've watched enough games to decide which one, but I don't think... Let me just answer this way. It wouldn't have 100% been the AD carry.
Okay.
There's a distinct possibility it could have been another role. That's as far as I want to go.
Now, Monty, there's no such thing as a simulation for you, my friend. There's a team called Alliance. And if you were to remove a player to help fix the team, but you can remove any player, would you have removed Tabzz, or would you have removed another player whose name you will now say?
Thank you.
It depends who's available, though. You have to look at who's available to replace him with, though.
Yeah, I think I would have replaced Wicked or Nif before I would have replaced Tabzz.
That's my boy. Okay, why?
Because I think that Nif really underperformed at Worlds, and I think that Wicked's performance was erratic, depending on his champion.
So another aspect that was tied into the Tabzz thing was... This was bizarre to me, because what I didn't understand is usually if you love your team and this guy gets removed and you want to shit on him, the way you would shit on him is like, well, everyone else in the team was awesome, you were shit. Whereas people seem to simultaneously say, Tabzz, you were really bad, but, you know, Nif isn't that good either. And I was sort of like, what? Why is Nif in the team then? So, Krepo, let me ask you this. I know Nif's like a long-term player, so in general you can't say they're bad or whatever. I've always actually thought Nif was very good, actually. I think he's just got... It's just you have to see him through a particular prism of his style of play, you know? Like, if you expect any kind of aggressive, like, balls to the walls, then you're going to be disappointed. But to me, it's a bit like Froggen in a way. If you reset the filter to like, okay, this guy has a different way of thinking about the game, there's some strength there in the way he's playing. He's not playing that way because he's like a pussy and he's scared to go in. It's more like he just thinks about the game differently. What is your sense on Nif? You've played against him for a long, long time.
It's really hard to even remember those like matches we've played. But like, I think Nif's strength, and like, don't get me wrong, like, this is not like, I don't want to be on a show to be like, hey guys, replace Nif. I'm support here. I think Nif's really strength is his consistency. He's been amongst the top even since season 1 already, and that's it. You know, like, he's just, you know what you get when you get Nif. He's a really consistent player. He seems very calm. I've never seen him rage ever. Apparently, like, he did get upset sometimes and like talked a little less. That's all I've heard. But then again, everybody has those phases. So yeah, I wouldn't call Nif out for shit. You know, I mean, they have no idea how they're gonna do. Who knows? You know, I am San Jose. They're gonna come out storm. They'll shit on every bot lane, and we're all wrong. You know, but.
The other thing too is that you know, earlier in the show, and I just want to underscore this as well, is that when we're talking about Alliance, we also kind of agreed that it probably wasn't individual performance that was their major problem, and I would say that all of their members are still in the top 50% of their position in the EULCS. So if they get along okay, there may be other ways to deal with these issues besides player replacements, and that would be kind of where I would go to first with that team for sure.
So let me ask you this then, Monty. The original criticism by experts of Alliance even from before we saw them play, was exactly kind of what you're hinting at now. Yeah, they have all the mechanical players, and they have very good players at every position, and they have sort of the all-star team mentality, where you have gotten a player who individually at his position definitely could be a top 3 team in his region. But the criticism initially was like, what will the style of play be like? And if anything, I think that's kind of what you guys have been going back to here. So if the style of play has some flaws to it, outside of bringing in a superstar coach, how does it really change? Because surely the style of play comes from the players, Monty. Does it give us some insight on the coaching side there? Like, does a new coach have to come in and impose a style? Can the players actually, will they come to a realization on their own? Like, no, we have to go a totally different way.
I want to go to back to what Krepo was saying earlier, because I think that, well, I understood what he was saying, but to make it ultra clear, when he says that, when he was talking about some of the attitudes that stubborn players can have, and that they may be right in their individual action, but that when combined with what everybody else is doing, it is just not optimal or whatever, to put it that way. And I think that that's what they really need, is somebody to sit back and kind of help them integrate better as a team and have that level of teamwork to know what the optimal decision for the team is, as opposed to just the optimal decision to the players. Because when I watch Alliance, it does seem kind of like disjointed at times, and it just doesn't flow well together particularly smoothly, and that it seems like there are communication issues taking place, and that comms are not as efficient or as well understood as they should be.
The biggest problem is, like, with veteran players that all have been, say, top 3 within their role, top 4 within their role for a very long time, is to get their respect, to make them listen to you, and then convince them that your ideas are good enough for them to shift their entire play style, which has been developing over time. It's not like Froggen has ever shifted his play style, right? It's been, for the majority, roughly the same. Okay, you can argue that he farmed way less Wraiths and Wolves, whatever, and Wicked, but it's really hard to gain the trust of a pro player. Even for me, like when we had an analyst or a coach, it's really hard. They have to work really hard to convince you, hey, you know, you're not wrong, but you're not as right as you can be, you know. And that's gonna be the trick for Alliance, finding one guy that can, from out of the game, convince them, hey guys, please listen to my ideas, then implement those ideas and see if they work. And even when they fail, try to highlight, no, they failed for these reasons. They didn't fail because the idea was bad. They failed because of execution or lack of practice, or we just got unlucky. And that's where coaching is getting really important, and analysts. And that's why you need those older individuals, maybe even players or ex-players that they have regarded as good players. You know, say Froggen ever quits playing and he wants to be a coach, people will listen to him because he's been a good player, you know, if he manages to convey his ideas in a proper manner.
I could even give you an example here of the problem that exists currently in these teams, because as you're saying, part of the issue is trying to convince the player. Like, listen, this might not seem like it benefits you now, but it'll benefit the team approach, okay? And so one of the problems I always saw in the West, back when, funnily enough, Krepo, I remember back in the day, I used to tell you guys in EG, etc., like, you can't just have a democracy all the time on everything. Like, it might have worked before. Like, eventually there's going to be issues with that, because obviously there'll be times when it's not working, and then people have different ideas. And okay, people all in the whole scene had to come to this conclusion and get real coaches and put in the structure, okay? But I remember a team, and I won't say which team it was, but I once sat in LCS, and this team came into the room I was in, and they said, like, oh, could we just use this room for a minute to do like the pick ban prediction aspect, to like do it on the chalkboard? And I was like, yeah, sure, like I'm just going to be sat here anyway. And so I got to hear them go through how they were going to do the picks and bans, okay, and what they thought the opponent would do. And in this team, one of their players knew everything about the opponent. He knew, like, okay, this team will always go for this option when it's available, and they'll try to get it towards this comp on the next pick. And so as a result, we'll pick this early on to try and counter that, or knowing what they'll get in the end. And as he was breaking it all down, every other member of the team, 3 out of the 4, were all going like, yeah, that makes sense. That's cool. Like, yeah, okay, I'll play that if that's going to work in the counter there. And like, I can see how if they pick this strong champion, this, even though it's not my best, like I'll pick that as like the response to it, you know. And I can see where our comp is going towards the end here. And they got down to the last player, and he was playing one of the carry positions. And they said to this player, like, okay, like, since you're sort of last and the way the pick bans will go, there'll be these 3 options probably open for you, okay? And you could pick this one, which is like, yeah, like it is like a signature champion for you, but that won't fit the comp that we've designed here. Like, to fit the comp, you have to pick this other one that, yeah, you don't play as much, but you'll be all right on it. And like, don't worry about if you lose lane or whatever, because actually you know, we'll win the game because we'll have the better comp than them. And you would think in this story that it ends with that player saying, okay, well, like you've explained that very rationally, like we'll do that. Instead, that player just spent like half an hour arguing like, no, but guys, like if I just get my player, like don't worry about the comp, like the comp will work because I'll win my lane so hard that it won't matter, you know, like I'll destroy that guy. Like, look, he'll have that. Remember, you just said he'll have that champion. So my champion beats his champion. And they kept trying to explain to this guy like really calmly, like, no, but like don't worry about that. Like we're not going to blame you if you lose the lane or whatever. Like the comp is going to work, it's going to win. And I could just see as this went on that like the whole scene in general, there was some of this going on in a lot of teams, and like there was kind of a realization that players hadn't come to yet. Now listen, that wasn't like very, very recently. Have teams in general got past that, Krepo?
I just have one question before I answer that.
Okay.
Was the player initially telling them like they're gonna do this, and then we answer with this? Was that one of the worst mechanical players on that team?
The one who
the one who led the charge with the analysis of picks and bans?
No. It wasn't a really bad one in that sense.
Okay, because then sometimes like it's hard for players to respect each other because they'll associate individual skill, and they don't take that away from knowledge, you know?
No, in this particular case, I think it's just that the guy who was arguing really did think of himself as like a carry, so he expected that he should be allowed to do that. That was his prerogative.
It's hard to give up the reins sometimes for a lot of these players that have to carry their teams a lot of the time. It's really hard for them to give up the reins and be like, okay, I'll just sit back, play passive, play into the composition, play into the team style, and let other people basically be their jobs to carry. But I think the longer we go, the more people will shift away from that, the more authority figures you get outside of the five. And that's the biggest issue, is when you have an argument in a team environment, sure, that democratic style works if everybody's reasonable, but nobody will ever be reasonable all the time. You will get upset, and when you get upset, you will be, you just won't be objective anymore. And that's when you need somebody that prior to that argument, all of you respect, all of you can bounce off to, and all of you agree on beforehand. If we ever have a discussion, this guy will have the final word, whether I agree or not. I will do my best to work towards that word. And if in hindsight it doesn't work, we can reevaluate, right? You basically make the agreement, we're going to listen to this guy, he's going to make the final judgment. And if he's wrong, then in hindsight, we're going to go back with like proof and say like, okay, I think you were wrong here. And if he's wrong many times, you just boot him, get a different coach.
Well, the other thing too is that not just above and beyond that, the coach can also be that person that relieves that stress point from the players, because he really should be the stuff that binds the players together. And if he's a mediator in that discussion, hopefully you can get the player who's being obstinate to back off and agree that what's best for the team. And if you have a guy whose only focus is the health of the entire team and not just their individual performance, then you can resolve these conversations if the players respect this person, because that player will back off. And it doesn't mean that I kind of disagree, because that doesn't mean necessarily that the coach is going to take the blame there. The coach is just trying to get everybody to agree on a plan so that you can move forward with that plan. Then as a team, you can evaluate it, because what you're saying would be more of a dictatorial style, and I don't really see that working very well on a Western team.
Yeah, well, I want to move towards like somewhere in between, you know. But like,
yeah, exactly.
There's too much decision on the five right now, and they need to agree that like somebody's got to talk for the team, you know. And you can't do that if you're part of the teams. Like, if you really want to cut that knot, you know. That's
so you have to kind of take all the data from all the players and input into the computer, which would be the coach in this sense. And the idea is he hasn't got any invested stock in what that one player would think, and he can objectively look at it.
I think that's a good way of trying it. At least in my history of teams, it would have been good to just have like a neutral source to not only to bounce off of, you know, maybe like neutral source. What do you think? Did I make a mistake here? You know, say fucking, I don't know, a teleport play, you know, did he teleport too early? Was that my bad on the call? Was there's always two sides to every story, but like it's really hard to put yourself in the other shoes, because nobody likes admitting to mistakes, you know. That's just a problem.
Monty, when you were on CLG, without dropping any dime on anyone, there was times, I think you've even said it on this show, where what was scrimmed or what was agreed upon is this is going to be our approach. I would sometimes ask you after the game, like, what the fuck happened? Like, why would they pick that? Or why was this decision made in the pick ban? And you'd even say, like, actually, I don't know. Like, that's not the comp like we'd even decided on. Or maybe last minute a player just changed to a champion he hadn't actually even been practicing. What is the struggle here between convincing guys like that? Because surely at the end of the day, isn't there a degree to which even the most obstinate player realizes, like, the better good of the team must prevail, right?
I would think so. And it didn't happen every time. And I don't want to make it sound like this was something that was too common, but it was not common. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. It did happen too much, but it wasn't a common occurrence. I guess I still don't know, and I think that's part of the problem with me being a remote coach, was that a lot of the times I didn't know what had happened or why it happened, and then I got conflicting accounts about what happened because I wasn't there to like dig into it at the time when it was occurring, or be there right before the match being like, okay, this is the game plan, and keeping everybody on track. I found that when I was at the LCS coaching, these problems did not occur because I would get the guys in a huddle before the game. We talk about the game plan on stage immediately beforehand, and I think that calmed their nerves, and I think things went better. So obviously, in-person coach better than remote coach. Not much of a surprise. And this is, I'm gonna segue this into something that I find very funny. Because on League Center, Travis's new show with Double Lift, Saint Vicious, and Crumbs.
See the way we promote all the shows in the scene? We're just benefactors to the whole scene. We're altruists in many ways, Monty. I want everyone to watch all these shows.
Actually,
and then decide
I
which is better.
I want to confess something, Monty, Thorin. I'm actually not going to be a pro player. Not going to be a coach. I'm just going to make my own show. Krepo Talks. And I'm just here to promote that. So next week, Krepo Talks.
All right,
just
we'll
let me know what time
buddy.
you're going to schedule at Krepo. I'll be sure to jump in there 5 minutes early with the broadcast. Okay.
All right, man. I'm on to continue. Sorry.
But they were having this discussion on the show about coaches and picks and bans, and both Saint and Double Lift, and I felt to a lesser degree Crumbs, felt that this coaches in the draft phase was not going to be a big deal, or that it wouldn't make any effect because according to their logic, the picks and bans had already been planned out. You have a conversation for a couple hours, before LCS about likely scenarios.
That must have been news to you when you were the coach of CLG, right? You were probably wondering, interesting, Double F. Really, you're going to according to plan. You're always doing what the coach. Okay, yeah. I'm learning a lot here. Okay, keep going, Monty.
So, I can just tell you from experience on CLG that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I was on any team. The fact that you say, well, it's already planned out, we already thought of the scenarios. There will be games where somebody's going to pull out some weird pocket pick, and you're not going to be ready for that. They're going to play a style you haven't seen before. And having somebody whose job it is to watch all the film and to be more involved in the pick and ban phase and really focus on that, because the players still have to focus on playing, while the coach can be more focused on this and can ultimately, I think, do a better job knowing the resources. And the other thing is that you can come in, you can intercept player cockiness before it happens. Because I will tell you straight up, and I'm sure this isn't any secret, because I'm sure this happened on literally every professional team ever. But we have a list of champions that we're practicing for positions, or we had these lists. We have giant spreadsheets for CLG. Every week we go through what's our champion pool, what champions are we working on, what champions are we going to play this week. Sometimes champions that aren't on those lists, for whatever reason that we have not practiced, might manage to find themselves into picks and bans. And I'm sure that happens for every team, okay? But the fact of the matter is that if there's a coach there, he can be like, no, that's a bad idea. We're not doing it. Or if he feels comfortable with it, he'd be like, okay, you've been working on this. I think you're ready. But it's like, it was like breaking my mind. They was like, oh, we don't need a coach in the pick and ban phase. It's just going to be like another voice. We already have the plan going in. I'm like, what universe do you come from? Because mistakes are made in picks and bans all the time. And I'm sure any coach for an LCS team or any team would say that. And the ability to have somebody in the comm, or, Double Lift and Saint were saying, well, we've got drafters on their team. That's their job. No, their first job is to be a professional player. And as a coach, you can actually dedicate a lot more time to doing the picks and bans. And I believe that Lord Loco said as well, I think in a vlog, I didn't watch it, but I read a comment where it referenced it. So my information is secondhand, that he also disagreed with the League Center discussion that this was not going to be helpful because he does the majority of the pick and ban planning for TSM. And therefore, while his players are off practicing the game, the coach can be sitting there, looking at all these scenarios, looking at film, looking at picks and ban phases. Hey, that's one less thing the players have to worry about. How does this not increase the level of play? These pro players were playing it off like, oh, it's, you know, we were already ready, so it's whatever. I'm like, no, because I will tell you that the plans often at times end up radically different than what actually happens in that phase.
So, Krepo, I do want to bring you on this, but I just want to stop for 1 second to highlight a great MonteCristo phrase, which is that you have to intercept cockiness. I'm pretty sure no one else in the world would ever. That's like one of Monty's like lists on his to-do list that day. He's like, okay, I'm going to plan the pick a ban phase, intercept cockiness, promote synergy. Like, it's like all those phrases. Okay, Krepo, what do you think about this discussion of the coaches in the pick ban phase?
Well, yeah. I just, in general, the less responsibilities or the more responsibilities you take away from a player, the better he will play.
Thank you.
Whether it is having to worry about picks and bans, having to carry the comms, because ideally you can just sit quiet, play the game, and have somebody feed you info, right? Imagine if 5 players could just play the game and they have this 6th voice just watching and telling them, hey guys, you're about to get ganked, or hey guys, the jungler stop, or this and this. No, you can't. So somebody has to carry that, and that takes away from their play. The same way picks and bans, if you don't have to worry about that, if you just during the week, coach asks you for your opinion. Okay, this matchup, would you like to play it? Yes or no? This comp, do you think is good? Yes or no? And he takes all that information, takes it with him in his little fucking package, and all you have to worry about is playing the game. It's gonna help. Obviously, you need to understand why the coach, and you need to trust the coach that he's gonna make the right decision for you. But you do that in the week leading up in your picks and bans talk, and then coaches will definitely help.
Of course, the pick and bans talk will still be there. But it can be planned better. I can tell you that it can be, especially with the coach in the booth, because you can have more advanced plans. Or, excuse me, the stage wearing noise canceling headphones, whatever. Sorry, I use my.
That's how sci-fi this concept is to Monty.
We're in the West MonteCristo. We ain't got no booths here.
No, Monty knows that in 2048 is when people will actually start listening to these coaches, though, in the pick ban phase. So we'll have booths by then, Krepo. Like, players will listen at that point.
So the whole scenario, though, is that not only that, but if we look at the Riot coach salary, they're giving 12.5 per split for a coach, and then I believe they're giving 12.5 for another support staff person, right?
Or the same coach, if you want to blow it.
Or the same coach. Guy. But let me blow your mind right now. Maybe you just have a pick and ban coach. Maybe that's that person's entire job, and you have a head coach. Wow! It's like, I don't know, you can't possibly. You can't talk. What?
Riot wants to incorporate the coaches in the game, you know. So I don't know if the
head coach is allowed. Yeah. Okay. The head coach is just the title is whatever, right? Okay. So they give the analyst the head coach, or they give like the sub coach the head coach role, but the head coach is actually the one running everything else. Like, who cares, you know? But that's the thing is
what I care about.
So yeah, that's God. It's just like, how could you possibly have logic that somebody whose job every week was only picks and bans, or who was trying to shoulder that burden, wouldn't make your team better if they were also good at their job?
Come on, Monty. The last thing we need is another coach the players don't listen to.
That's true.
So, okay, I've got some more news now. And this news will obviously lead into a nice, juicy segment. I can't imagine what it will be about. So this American team called Evil Geniuses have announced that they've re-signed a young, promising talent called Pobelter, who, listen, he's very young. Did I stress yet that he's young and that he's a talent? And that, listen, I know you guys are probably thinking young talent. He probably just started recently, like he just got to start in the game. And I'm assured, repeatedly, that he's going to blossom into a world-class mid laner who's one of the best in the world, even though he's been playing since Season 1 and has constantly been around these teams. But aside from all that, that's just circumstantial aspects. This guy's an incredible talent. The potential, the unlocking, the buzzwords, the hype. Krepo, you know a little bit about the young man, Pobelter.
Mm-hmm.
Explain to me why he is, in fact, this incredible young talent who, now that he doesn't have to go to school, will become Faker 2.0.
All right. So, hyperbole aside, I do think, actually, Pobelter still has a lot of growth left. I honestly believe that he's still getting better.
Okay. He hasn't hit his growth spurt yet?
Yeah, okay, whatever. But, like, not necessarily. I think experience will help Pobelter a lot. I think...
What type of experience do you think? Just more LCS?
No, being in a team together. Working together in a team. This is the first time he's played a year in an LCS split, and you learn from that. Like, I've played fucking 3 years or 2 years already, and I'm still learning, and I'm still looking back like, shit, how did the way I approach the game and the team environment has been wrong in a sense every year since that. Every year I've learned something new. So he'll learn something new, and that might make him better. And as a player, I still think he's getting better. Even though it's dumb, you know, he's been playing for 4 years, blah, 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 blah. Sure, but he was in school, so if you sleep like 6 hours a night or 5 hours a night and you go to school and you have to scrim afterwards, you'll play like shit. He played like shit in a lot of the scrims. But when it really matters, he played well sometimes. So he has to work on his consistency. But right now, he's pulling like insane hours into the game. He's playing. He's making his own team, you know. He has Altec there. He has Helios there. He can choose his teammates now. So there's no excuse there. So hopefully they'll have a really good team environment, which is healthy, and they can all work together as a really good team. And I do think they can do better than last year. Then again, 7th place in LCS isn't really that hard to beat. But yeah, I think it's good that he, well, finds a team.
Monty, do you know much about Pobelter? I mean, he was actually one of the people where people were saying maybe he would go to CLG, or maybe he'd go to a bigger team. Do you know much about Pobelter, the mid laner?
I mean, I was impressed with him as more and more as the season went on. I think he was getting better, and yeah, I mean, I do think that he was a little bit hamstrung by his mandatory education previously, and now that he's away from that, it could be a little bit different. But I did see him kind of in a general upswing.
So in terms of EG, the team, you were mentioning there, Krepo, some of the old players who maybe aren't there, or the old formation
who will
was
soon not be EG, by the way. The EG that will not be EG soon.
No.
They'll embrace their true roots, which they always were, really, Velocity. But they just had like a different lick of paint on this. Listen, you can draw racing stripes on the side of a Mini, but it's still a Mini. You know, it can't like outperform a Formula One car. Like, yeah, I'm sorry.
If they replace their engine and then get new tires, maybe they can get a better car.
If they get a better spoiler, you know, like the support player, then anything's possible.
Exactly.
They can get all hot chicks.
That's what I mean.
Okay, but Krepo, what I was going to get to here was one of the criticisms I have of Pobelter is he has some good games, but it's always billed as though he's in prison, bad teammate prison, and that's what's held him back, as well as the school aspect. Like, he's never had the right team around him, never had the right teammates. And yet almost no one is actually willing to come forwards and just say, okay, well, who are the jailers in this prison? Who are the bars around him? You know, everyone wants to say that every player in LCSNA is a good player, and they can all be good players, and they're all great, and it's not anyone's fault, and no one underperformed. So if these guys are in prison, someone's underperforming. Someone isn't good enough to put them at the level where they could be the best. You know,
I think Pobelter. I'm not going to say Pobelter was held back by his teammates. I won't go that far. I think Pobe used to tilt a lot, and I think that affected his play. And I think towards the end of the season, a couple of games, I could have seen, like, if this would have happened in the earlier season, Pobe would have tilted, but he regained his composure, and he played out that game and ended up like playing a lot better. And I think that's what he needs, like, just experience, to not get upset, like, do not tilt, and just work better in a team environment, scrim better, because our scrim environment was fucking horrible, dude. Do you know that Super Week we went 4-0? Do you know how many scrims we won that week? We won 2 scrims an entire week. The last scrim block that week on Friday evening against Curse, we canceled because our team was so upset and there was arguing going back and forth. This is literally a day before we had to play on Saturday. That scrim block was canceled because we weren't even in a state to play the game anymore. That's how, like, fucked up it was. And that wasn't anyone's particular fault. It was just a culmination of issues that were left untreated and by everybody, and that went to shit, you know. And like, maybe next year they'll learn from that. Pobelter, we spoke, like, we're not salty at each other. He said, like, yo, you know, I'm sorry the way it went down at the end. Didn't really want it to do it that way, but I didn't see like a way out, so like that's the way it went. And I'm like, done. You apologize, I accept it, we're good. And then I really hope they learn from that next season. They fix their shit, they get good practice in, and he works on being calm. He keeps playing in the game so much right now. Like, he has like 3 accounts in top 10 challengers, so his mechanics won't be lacking. All it needs is a good environment and then a good team, and then yeah, they can do well.
Krepo, I get tilted when people bring up the tilt issue because it's a trend that happens so often in the West, where any guy who's billed as this young talent, it's always his downfall. Oh, he just tilts. Like, he's really, in practice, he's awesome. In some games in the regular season, he really shows it. But when it comes to the moment, it's always presented as like he just tilts. Meanwhile, if you think about top Asian players, there are almost no top Asian players who really do have that star potential who tilt. It doesn't happen. They get immediately weeded out of the scene, or they have to get over it, basically. And the reason I bring this up is because I have a general rule in esports, just from my history in the game. I will always bet against the tilter when it's a pressure game. Like, mainly, here's the thing. I don't say it as though they're like they're shit and they can never be good, but mainly because a lot of them are in denial and they don't believe that it's a big problem. They think it's like you're saying, like, oh, if I could just get over it, then but it's like, I think some of them don't address the issue. So is this even a factor for you?
Like the fact that people ignore that they tilt?
Like it seems like you don't mind it that much. He'll get over it. It'll be fine next season. Just play another split and it'll be okay.
I'm just saying there is you're like, okay, people have been saying, oh, Pobelter, he's gonna grow into this really beautiful flower, but he's still blossoming for 4 years, and like that's a joke. But I do think he's still improving. Whether I think like he can get rid of that tilt, fuck, I don't know, dude. But I think it's possible. Knowing from my own play, I know I've tilted less and in different ways and managed to like control that over time. And maybe I still do sometimes. I don't know. It's really hard to judge that on myself. But if I look back to season 2, the way I would be able to like shut down in scrims or shut down in a tournament play. Now I notice and I'm like, okay, guys, I think I'm about to tilt. Let me take a walk. Take a 5-minute walk and you're good again. But if you play that extra game, you just ruin the entire day of practice, you know? So it is something you can work out. And you don't even know if the Koreans tilt or not. You don't even know if they're working on that. I think it's really important, but I think you can prevent tilt a lot if you get along well with your team. Because if you get along well with your team, somebody will see that you're about to tilt and be like, no, dude, chill, we got this. You know, I'm about to carry bot lane. And if you say that and he trusts you, then he'll actually believe you. And you'll be like, okay, I'll just sit back for a couple of minutes, just farm AFK in my lane, and maybe you'll get back in the game.
I even think, though, that tilt is part of what balances the scene out. The reason the scene isn't just the most skilled players is because the level of skill to a degree decides how high you go, but then I feel like it gets sort of funneled through I wouldn't say almost like a grater, which is like how you perform in the game. Okay, like nerves, composure, and there's some players whose skill level isn't insanely high, but they're really good under pressure. They're really good in that, and so as a result, they can still be in a top team over even a guy who's more skilled. Like, I'll give you an example here. Potentially, you might have been in Alliance now. It might have actually happened. Maybe they would have accepted you, maybe for some of these reasons. Veteran player, experience, doesn't just tilt under pressure, etc. Meanwhile, a guy like Mithy, if you ask any players from a year ago, 2 years ago, this guy's always been considered like very skilled player. In certain scenarios, might have even been the best support player, but obviously had some sort of tilt factor which has held him back. So actually, he hasn't gotten to this top level, and at the moment, he wasn't even in contention to get onto a massive team like this. So there's a balance there, you know. Like I'm not saying it like we're just doing it to trash the other guys. It's also because you have to give credit to the guy who, isn't as skilled, maybe doesn't have the same potential, but he does hold it together. He's got that side sort of wrapped up, you know. What do you think on this?
Consistency is a quality that people like underrate at times, because people always, even players between each other, you know, like you'll compare your high to another player's average. You know, when I look at another player, I'm like, oh yeah, he's doing this and this and this regularly. You know, when I play at the top of my game, I can beat that. But you never take into account that player might not even be playing at the top of his game. He might be playing at 60%, and you'll be comparing your 100% to his 60. But if he constantly plays at 60 or 80%, and you need your 100% to beat that, then hey, he might even be a better player than you.
Monty, without sounding cruel, as someone who's been in teams before and has some experience, obviously with this issue, because you had Link in your team, you had other players who sometimes had issues, nerves, whatever it might be, not being able to perform to the degree we know they could. If you were just, as a general principle, if you had the choice, is it better to you if you know the player to just work with them, or is there a time when you have to say, I'll go with someone else who might be less skilled, but that isn't an issue anymore? Is there a balance to be made there?
I think there is a balance, and I think that I don't possess the skills that a sports psychologist or somebody specifically trained for years in that field would have in order to help those issues. I simply don't have the knowledge in order to do that. And I think very few people in esports who are actively working in the industry do, with the exception of like Lucas, who's with SK, and maybe this guy that Cursed is like trying to hire to do stuff with their players, from what I understand. But I think you need a trained professional in that area to really maximize your benefit. Or a person who has overcome those issues themselves, which I have not had to do. So I think that working with them with a trained professional would be the first step. But in general, I value, it's no real secret that I value that kind of consistent play over, I would rather take a more consistent player with a slightly lower ceiling than take the higher ceiling player who is just wildly oscillating, which is why it goes back to my love of the KT Bullets. We talk about it all the time, but on the best KT Bullets roster, only Kakao was really legitimately top 3 in his position in Korea, but yet they had what was very close to the best team, like a very close second best team in 2013. And I think they did that just through Score was very consistent. Ryu was very consistent. InSec in the top lane was not very consistent, but pretty consistent. Mafo was very consistent. And it just gave them, especially in a best-of-5 format, a really good chance to finish it out and win the series.
Maybe Pobelter does unlock his potential. Maybe this is the season, and I haven't quite given enough faith in the fact that he could overcome these problems. But I'll just end the Pobelter segment by saying sort of my reaction when I heard this news. Because one thing that always tilts me, is when teams have bad runs, and they repeatedly have bad runs, and then they do the thing of like Dignitas re-signing Kiwi Kid. And I'm sort of like, well, that's like part of your problems, with certain players. And so you had a chance to upgrade, and instead you've gone with the same player. So my reaction, Monty, when I saw that Pobelter re-signs with EG was I thought, and I linked it in the Reddit thread, I thought of this clip from the movie Blade, the movie where there's that guy who's like a half vampire.
Yeah, Wesley Snipes.
And towards the end of the movie, he's in the big fight with the main boss, and the main boss is like, he's just about to defeat him, and so he's about to deliver his sort of James Bond-esque one-liner. And so what Wesley Snipes says in that moment, this was my reaction to the news, he just says, some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill. And that's what I thought when I saw EG re-signs Pobelter.
Really? If you were a G, what would you have done? Who would have you signed?
I'd rather gamble on someone we haven't tried before.
Really?
Why not? Think of dude. Here's one for you. Do you want a great example here, Krepo? You want to hear a crazy Thorin move I'd do? Here's what I would do.
Put it in my porridge and stir it.
Yeah, I will. I'll stir it, motherfucker. I'll put honey in it as well. Now, what I would do, and you might think this is ridiculous. I would get Tabzz to come over to America and play mid lane. How you like that? How you about that? How's your porridge taste now? Is it just right, motherfucker? Is it too cold? How crazy is that idea?
Correct. So you'd put Tabzz in a new environment with a Korean jungler?
Yeah. But I'd make sure it was germ-free, and that he had someone with him at all times, and that he had earplugs for when he was sleeping, and that he actually had a real bed at the bottom of the stairwell. Like, I'd have everything thought of, Krepo. Don't worry. I've really thought this through,
Maybe you were wise enough to decline that coach position.
Yeah, maybe I was.
I know. I think Tabzz could actually, I don't know how he plays mid still, but he might be a decent mid laner still.
But I mean, the idea I'm going with here is I want someone where it's a gamble, but there could be a good upside to it,
Nah, I think once you got Pobelter out of Krepo prison, I think you'll do a lot better.
And what if we'd have put Alliance in Krepo prison? Anyway. I
have faith in Pobelter. Like after I left EG, part of me was like, okay, I want him to crash and burn. I'll be honest. Wow. For a while. Wow. Yeah, obviously gonna think that. But right now, coming to terms a little bit and talking, I even helped him, with contract shit right now. He's like, what should I...
Oh, I get it. No, Krepo, I get it. Listen,
I'm his agent.
I fucked up here. What I just realised is you used to want EG to crash and burn, and so then Pobelter was like, I'm thinking of maybe like re-signing with him. You're like, you should definitely re-sign him. Like, this would be. I want to. In fact, let's go for a long-term contract here, 2 or 3 years. You should be the franchise player. You've got a lot of potential to unlock. But Krepo-san, sometimes I like crumble, like tilt and stuff. That's going to be fixed. You're out of school now. Like, you're practicing a lot more. Don't even worry about that. Pay no heed, young man. In fact, you know what? Froggen used to kind of tilt like you did, but look what he's become. This can work out for you. I'm telling you, man. Okay, keep going, Krepo.
All right, I'll leave it at that. I think Pobelter could do really well.
Okay.
Against mid laners in the LCS next year.
Any predictions you'd like to make? Maybe you'd like to be bold here.
I don't know who they're getting as their 5th player or what their infrastructure is going to look like, which I think is the biggest thing EG needs to improve. So I'm not going to make any bold predictions. But let's say
in a world where every starter had a bed, though.
There were enough beds. Okay. Let's switch the topic. Let's not throw too much mud here. Anyways.
So I've got another question about EG then.
All right.
There was this incident on one of those Korean talk shows where Helios went on. And I know this will shock everyone, but Helios actually badmouthed some of his teammates. Oh, golly, that's never happened before. And so he happened to mention, just accidentally dropped it, because, maybe in some way it would like make him look better if they were all bad. No, I don't know why he'd do it. So he happened to mention that that InnoX, he didn't say InnoX, like he actually just said the top laner, so he didn't even know the name of his own top laner. He said that the top laner in EG had only played something like 300 games, I think he said, in the time when Helios suggested that he'd played like, I think 1,000 or something, like a massive amount. And listen, this all came out in public, and InnoX said something like, yeah, that was the problem in the past, but I play more now. And then I think it was kind of resolved. But Krepo, you were on the team. What can be going on that the player is not playing solo queue at all? Was this an issue at all in your team?
All right. How do you... I'm just getting on my mitts, so I don't like get burned here. I think Tyson, who is InnoX, for people that don't know, who was the top laner for Evil Geniuses. Initially, when we all started, I think he played Parch a little solo queue, and we tried, and we've told him that, like we've come to agreement in hindsight that it was the case, and we tried to like fix it. But from management side, people are like, yeah, well, he's doing fine, and like we don't want to impose rules upon him, because it might make him play worse, it might make him upset, and I think that's fair. But over time, he spent his days out of scrims. He'd rather play normal games or even like other stuff. And like if that's your practice regimen, it's fine as long as you perform. I'm still of the opinion if Tyson played more and dedicated more to it, he could have played better. And I think in the end we ended up agreeing on that. And it is worth noting, and it really wasn't shown, but like towards the end of the split, he played a shit ton more. He put in so many hours, but by that time the team environment was like, it was sour, it was beyond fixing. So no matter how many games he played at that point, it was all for naught. It was done, He was somewhat of the scapegoat, if something went wrong. People wouldn't say it, but you could feel it in the air, you could feel it in the tension, Some things don't have to be spoken out, And at that point, yeah, it was too late. And I think the criticism was okay, but at one point when Helios made that statement, Tyson was playing more games than Helios at that point. But because Helios is a veteran player, perhaps Helios needs less games to stay at the level he is than Tyson, and that's an argument that he made, and I think that's fair too. And I think every player should know for himself how much he needs and should make sure he hits that and then a little more just to be sure. Did
it fuck with the team dynamic that this stuff came out by here? Because this was like in the middle of the season, I seem to think.
No, I didn't. I actually never had that. I heard about that later, that he said that. And I think that VOD actually aired really late. At what point the team dynamic was already
okay.
Like, it was horrible, and it was fucking disgustingly horrible how bad it was at points.
What do you think then about the topic? Because this can tie back into the Tabzz thing, where to Tabzz, he said about 6 to 8 hours of practice is about all that he thinks like someone like him at least can do before they burn out. And I kind of made my points in my video. Like, I kind of agree. Like, if you had the right 6 to 8 hours, you might not need any more. And listen, if you were someone who's like Froggen, yeah, you can go and do more if you want as well, extra. What is your opinion on this, Krepo? You've been in lots of different teams.
Obviously, like, I can only speak out of my own experience. What improved my play towards the end of the season was, instead of trying to get better and put in like those last 4 hours, no, like I put 2 hours of my practice time going to the gym. That's what helped me. Get in a healthy mind, healthy body, get the fuck out of that house for a while. Think about how I was going to practice while I'm at the gym. Okay, like, these champions I need to work on. These 4 champions I want to play this weekend. I'm going to do that. I think you should play at least 4 hours of scrims, probably 5 hours of scrims. You can maybe even go 6 if you space them properly. You need some solo queue because you want to work on champions individually outside of scrims. If you want to add, say I am top lane, I want to add Aatrox to my champion pool, I'm going to practice Aatrox in solo queue. I'll play the fucking standard Maokai tank, whatever, in scrims. I'll try to vary that up so I have 4 or 5 champions ready. And then next week I can incorporate Aatrox into my scrims. So I want 2 hours at least of solo queue. I want 5 hours of scrims. Hopefully you get some alone time. Maybe not every day, say 3 days in a week you go to the gym. And then the other 2 days you have some VOD reviews with your coach or whatever. And I think that's a healthy practice schedule. Whenever I hear people, oh my God, Korea plays 14 hours a day, I'm like, do the fucking math. If you do 14 hours a day, sure, some days you can do that, but if you do 14 to 16 hours every day, when are you going to sleep? When are you going to eat? And when are you going to get outside to get some fresh air? Like, it's absolutely bogus and mental to do that, because you'll just burn to ashes within a year.
Well, that's what happens to them. And they do that. I mean, some of them, not all of them do that, but some of them do that. And I don't think it's healthy, and I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good at all. I don't think it's good at all. No, I don't even think it is optimal. I think
very few individuals. Like Froggen, I know he plays a shit ton of League, but even then, maybe it's better like spend some time with your team. At what point, if you play 12 hours a day, isn't the 2 hours better spent to go bowling with your team? Or
I agree.
Get some dinner with your team?
I mean, that's definitely my attitude.
Okay, I see what the problems were in EG here, Monty. Like, they do their scrim block, and then Krepo was like, "Who's up for bowling?" And then they were like, "I really want to watch movies right now, Goose." It's like, "Where's the synergy? Where's the love? Bring it in, bowling on 10."
I'm taking you bowling next time we hang out, Krepo.
Hey man, I didn't get enough bowling, Cali. Okay. Can't help me there.
Okay, right. So, Monty, on this topic though, I actually kind of obviously, like, I agree with, like I said in my video, I think 6 to 8 hours sounds reasonable if you did it right, if it was the right. And also, listen, maybe 6 to 8 hours of play, and then maybe you can have 1 or 2 hours that's just like thinking, so it's a little less super intensive in that sense, and you can make it like that. But I also kind of agree with Krepo in a weird way, which is that I think that for extreme cases, it is fine to do insane hours. Like when he says there with Froggen, I've always felt like Froggen is actually the exception to the rule, where it's really unfair to compare a lot of other Westerners to Froggen. Because like Melk said in his post on Reddit, Froggen's a guy where literally, if you told Froggen, right, okay, you've played your hours for today and you've done your solo queue, go and have some fun, he'd be like, awesome, I'm going to play some League of Legends. Like,
yeah,
most people aren't like that, dude.
Legitimately like that.
No,
that's a rare case.
League at 4 a.m. in the morning, screaming with his normal games with his friends, like literally that the entire gaming house could hear him. But I'm not going to be like, hey, Froggen, shut the fuck up. I'm like, no, keep playing, have fun with League.
And listen, there's cases like that in real sports, okay? Like, for example, the famous examples of, like, people like Michael Jordan really did used to practice, like, every hour of the day they could and get, like, minimal sleep and stuff. But these are obviously, like, first of all, exceptional talents and guys who maybe they're just built for that, you know? They can just handle the strain, and to them, it doesn't wear on them. It's like that idea of, this kind of ties into the Tabzz thing here. Okay, it sounded to Tabzz like he was in the world that Soaz always says he is in. Where, yeah, he likes League when he's playing a competitive game and he has a chance to win, but there's times when it just becomes a job to him and it's not as fun to play the scrim, okay? So at that point, he's actually being a professional. He'll practice the hours that you demand of him for his job, and he'll think of it like a job, but then he wants to have time off from his job and go home in this metaphor and just have time off and do other things. Whereas in the example of the Michael Jordan type guy, that guy loves playing the game and wants to win so much that he's essentially giving up the rest of his life. But you can't expect everyone to give up their life.
And not only that, but not every star-level talent requires that much practice. And I think that if Tabzz was doing that well on the amount of practice that he had, I mean, it seems pretty good. He was already better than most, and he knows himself. And should he be required to practice more, that might actually create a dip in his performance from fatigue, or you never know.
Really. Yeah, you don't know. That's why you need a neutral coach to regulate that. Find out during the season who performs how. And how much practice, how much does sleep matter to that person? Because some people need 7 hours a night, and then you have these lazy bums that need 9, or perceived lazy bums that need 9 or 10 hours. But when they're fully awake, they practice so much better,
Yep, exactly.
The one exception I would have is find your rhythm during a year and then try to amp it up during a boot camp. That's the one time I feel like maybe it's allowed to go a little hard. Save your energy. Get a few days off before the boot camp, and then agree as a team, we're going to go hard. We're going to practice hard. We're 5 guys in this together for 2 weeks. Bam, Worlds, perform.
But that also means that you have to take a conscious decision at some point in the season to practice less as well. And there's no problem with that. If you have a good coach who's understanding the team, maybe you say in the middle of a split, if you're doing well or you're near the top of the standings, we're going to dial back practice for a couple weeks and then go hard at the end of the season just so we don't all burn out right here. It's actually a reasonable approach to take, I think.
If you convince your players beforehand that's why you need dialogue, right?
Right.
You need to explain them why rather than enforce it, especially in Western teams. If you manage to explain why you're doing something and you get people to agree on, hey, that makes sense, you can get so much done more, I think. And if you do that a couple of times, you explain why, you do it, it works out. Eventually, you can skip the why and people will just listen to you.
Does it go the other way, Krepo? I mean, I don't know if you want to mention a name, but have you known players who really could go the other way, and they could have played like literally 3 hours a day, and they'd still be like incredible level? Is there really people like that?
Let me dial back. In teams that I've played in, no idea.
Players you know in general. Have you ever known a player like that?
I have no idea. No, I don't think so. I think you need at least 5 hours a day if you're okay. Maybe a day off, right? After LCS, in EU, Saturday off, start Sunday again. But from my own experience, like you need to play League at least like 5 hours. Be busy with it. Play at least it keeps your mechanics up. And I feel on average a day 8 hours, maybe 9 is because this is your job. You're in the gaming house. Just make sure you do other things. Because I'm in that right now. I'll be playing all day and then be like, oh, I'm so upset I lost my last 2 games. It's midnight. Oh, better play 3 more games so I get that elo back. It's fucking worthless, dude. Fix your sleep schedule. Go get your ass to the gym or do something fun. Then play 8 hours. If it doesn't work, play 8 hours tomorrow. Just don't chase it. Don't chase the loss, because you'll get in this vicious cycle where you'll get emotionally drained. You wake up with League, you go to bed with League, and if you do that for a couple of weeks in a row, you'll burn out.
One topic that we should bring up is a discussion on the past weeks of the show, especially because we had X Special on last week, was about Piglet joining Curse. And I have always put forward the issue, which I didn't say would definitely be a case, but that I've always been worried when I hear about Koreans who are like a 100% native and they don't have experience speaking English and they've definitely never lived in the West, coming from that team house environment where everything's set up and it's very Korean in the way it's done, to the West where maybe they have different responsibilities or teammates interact differently, different food, different everything. I've always been worried that some of them might freak out, or it might just be too weird for them, or it might just be a problem in some sense. I actually to make it not just about Koreans, I actually said the same thing when Bjergsen joined TSM, because I knew Bjergsen's history was, everyone sort of said in Europe, like, listen, this guy's like a bit fragile, like he has to be kind of treated with kid gloves. And I was worried, like I made the joke that he'd be going to TSM and then we'd see Bjergsen crying as Reggie sort of said something to him. Like, I did that jokingly, but I kind of meant it. Like, it's such a clash of cultures and expectations that you don't know how someone will handle it. So we've had this situation where on his stream, I mean, what's the story? Did you see it, Krepo? Essentially, Piglet sounded like he was upset with things, or something's uncomfortable about his time in Curse at the moment.
So I didn't watch the stream itself because apparently he even said it in Korean. So he has mods apparently translating. So this is, again, secondhand information. So I got it from Reddit. There was a Reddit thread about it. That Piglet feels uncomfortable, especially since he's never had to learn a language before. So he doesn't know how to approach it. He's trying his best to learn English. I mean, he's a very prideful person as well, right? So like I don't think he wants to talk English on stream unless he knows it's going to be good.
Yeah.
And he feels a little alienated. I just wanted to like touch on that topic because I think it's very important, like with all these roster shuffles and people just moving from one continent to the other, that people underestimate how much of an influence that is. If you can't even talk to the persons in your house, if you can't communicate well with your team, you can have at one point like the best AD carry, or one of the best AD carries in the world, sit there now in the house being miserable and not liking how we feel. We even saw Amazing go back to Europe because he didn't feel at home in the States and he already speaks English, And one other topic I want to touch on this, I feel that Super Hot Royal Club, so that Royal Club was the exception to the rule that you can play with a lot of different nationalities and just ping your way to victory because you happen to all have a playstyle that involves you jumping in head first. I think we'll see a lot of these mixed teams fail in that regard in the coming season.
Well, put it this way, Krepo. Let's imagine that I took Piglet and instead I put him on to Alliance and he was going to be their AD karaoke. And he doesn't know English, so we'll just tell him, listen, it worked for Royal Club. All you're going to do is ping when you want everyone to go in. And then the team fight's going to start. And then Piglet jumps in, he's ping, 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 ping. And then Froggen backs off and then like Sniff's backing out. Like you could see in a lot of teams how that approach just wouldn't work. You'd need more communication than you had, even with some of the other players you had before.
And I don't know if Royal Club was like a stroke of luck or a stroke of genius that got all these specific players together. In fact, I feel that it must have, it could have been a little bit of both, right? But to a certain
more
degree,
than luck. There's no way that's pure luck, right?
Yes. But also Zero was very untested as a support player because he was a reserve player when he was in Korea for the most part. Yes, he did play some, he played some terrible jungle games. And then he played some actually pretty decent support games when they put him in. But to put him with a player like Uzi, who would have known that he was going to be so good at peeling for an AD carry like Uzi? Obviously, they may have done tryouts, probably did, and like figured that out. But I think that that is a rare occurrence, and I really agree with this. That this great experiment, which it's not really, I guess it's not really an experiment, because I think it's pretty clear that the reason why these Chinese teams are recruiting these very top elite level Korean players is at least partially due to the streaming deals that these teams have, and the fact that in China there are a bunch of competing streaming services, unlike in the West where Twitch is like head and shoulders above every other streaming one. So there's kind of like this weird streaming war that's going on in China right now, which would probably be healthy to have in the West, but we don't have that. And so by bringing them in for the stream numbers, that is also a concern, as well as creating a top tier team. But as League of Legends matures, every single passing year, team communication and teamwork gets more and more important. It was less important when the game started because you could get by on individual mechanics, but it's just so integral to the way the game plays at this point. And also, the thing that's very interesting to me is that if we look at when INSEC and Zero went to China, it was before the summer split, the summer season, right? And so the game everybody by that time had kind of figured out the season 4 changes and what was going on in 2014. And so you could go into a team and kind of refine that. My main concern right now is that these players are going over right as these changes are made. And because no one has the game figured out at all right now, how are they going to communicate or have discussions about how to figure out the game? And that may create some lag in the the Sino-Korean teams that are happening as to what the proper way to play the game is going to be. And it may cause roadblocks, whereas a team who can talk about the game every day in the same language will be able to kind of work through these issues a little bit faster.
Because a lot of it is nuance as well, right? I think that's something that was brought up in that Reddit topic as well about Piglet. Maybe you can explain. You can say, you can say go, and you can say back, and you can ping forward, and you can say, okay, here I want to go aggressive. But like when there's a nuance, when you want to explain, for example, when this guy is moving up to last at this creep, that's when I want you to move a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, and then we can step in like right as this projectile's flying. I don't know. There's so many little things that you can talk about that are like lost in translation really easy.
Krepo, and literally, if you watched that episode where Helios was on that True LOL show, he said this about EG. And obviously Helios speaks pretty decent English for a Korean who's a native. Okay, he doesn't speak great English, but he speaks a lot better English than I imagine Piglet does, and definitely better than INSEC speaks Chinese. Okay, well, on that show, Helios kind of flamed EG a little bit, because he said that he would say something like, go in, and then you would all just walk in a straight line, and he'd meant like go in, like go around the sides, and like he was trying to communicate something that had nuance, but he couldn't get that across. So as a result, unfortunately, ended up you went in, but in exactly the opposite way than what he'd hoped.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to it, and as well, your entire team communication for us, for example. So at one point, I was speaking broken English in game. Like when I talked to Dongjin, it would be like, Dongjin, you won't go ward, that's like, so that's how you speak to a Korean, you cut you don't conjugate your verbs, you keep it to the essential, you just list a verb where you want to do with it, and that's what you do. You skip every bullshit, but that gets rid of every nuance. But it was the best fix we had at that point, and it's going to get even worse like for other teams. So I hope they find a way, maybe with a bilingual coach that just says like, this is the plan, this is how we approach these situations, and every time, and you'll just do it that way.
And the thing is that some of these Chinese teams do have Korean coaches, or they have live-in or semi-permanent Korean to Chinese translators. But the problem that's very interesting with the Korean-Chinese thing is that almost all of the pro players who go to Korea from China will have better English than they do Chinese, because they're taught it's like a mandatory subject in school in Korea. Chinese is not. So actually,
even bigger.
The gap is even bigger than you think it is. Also, they can't read Chinese because while Korea used to use the old Chinese characters, and they're still used occasionally in like official documents, they've used the Hangul alphabet, these days, because it's not a tonal language, so they can use an alphabet, and that changes things as well. So, sometimes Koreans can read Chinese but not speak it, but that's probably not even the case with these players.
Something Krepo brought up there actually also is something that I would mention as a potential warning sign for Piglet, which is when you mentioned that he has these high expectations and obviously expects a lot of himself. We all remember the famous example where SK Telecom has just won OGN Winter. They've just gone undefeated and gone back to back, all these like records that they've broken. And Piglet was like crying because he himself hadn't played like a really good game. Now people might think, okay, that's just one extreme one-off example. But if you saw that Worlds feature about him, he seemed like he was a guy who had extremely high expectations for himself. So this isn't an issue right now, but I could see down the line. Listen, we all know the history of Curse. Curse, except for the first split of LCS ever, they've never been the team that comes out the gate and is top of the league immediately and is riding it all the way and is going to win the league. They've never been that team. So if Curse get to are having any kind of problems in terms of performances, or they're having losing streaks or anything, I would really worry that this aspect of Piglet's personality might be a problem again, because like maybe he expects a lot, and also now he can't necessarily talk to teammates and say like, you know, like it'd be hard for him to express this frustration in that sense. So that could really unfortunately impinge upon all these aspects of like if he's uncomfortable, and I'd worry about something like that. It's not a problem right now, but it's something you could potentially see on the horizon.
I mean, you've had players go through that like process of isolation, even in full English teams, even in like just European players transferring to NA, you know, and being a little lonely, different culture, not getting along with teammates, and then add another language barrier to that, add another culture to that. It's going to be really important for Curse to add like some infrastructure to really make Piglet feel home. And I think the guys have been working on that though. Apparently, like they've been really they've been trying to be really nice to him, like incorporate him in a lot of things. And it might get better, but I definitely think that's something we should look out for more when people are constantly praising these Korean imports, because it matters a lot what you do with the talent and how you cultivate it, because just having the raw talent isn't like, it's not going to get you anywhere.
I think that a step that Curse could take to make Piglet feel at home is get I Will Dominate started on Korean lessons. But the problem is the first thing he'll say is, what is Korean word for like?
I think, in a more serious way.
Yes, Monty, what do you think?
That they have a hole in the mid lane right now that could be filled by a Korean player, including somebody like Ryu, who, after bombing out with Millennium recently in the expansion tournament in Europe, he's still a reliable player in the mid lane.
How about we do a expansion now then, so we can talk about that in like a minute, and I'll keep it in mind. So, did you watch any of the expansion games, Monty? I know Krepo did, so it's no problem if you didn't.
No, I was prepping for IEM this weekend, so I had requested to some of the teams that I be able to watch their scrims.
Yeah.
So I've been watching that because I need to know as much as is possible to know, which is not a whole lot right now about patch 4.20. So I was more concerned.
Krepo, you know when I said how some of us, you know, we need a lot of practice, we need to put in a lot of hours and be prepared and do our work. But some people are just talented, you know, and they can sort of flaunt it. They have a luxury where they can just turn up and just play, and it all works out well for them, you know. It's interesting how that dynamic works, isn't it, Krepo? You know, me and you down there in the trenches doing our work. It'd be nice to be a Froggen or an Expeke of the world, wouldn't it?
Hey, I'm just saying. I was looking at 420. That's it. Also, I don't really care about the expansion tournament. I'll be honest.
So what Monty's saying is, it was 420, so he didn't give a fuck about watching these games. He just chilled. He thought about what he's going to do when he gets to San Jose, which is on the west coast of America. You know, I think it's legalized there. Yeah. So he's going to get his medicine. He was just looking for all that will cure what ails him. Is essentially
no,
what
I see. He's squinting a lot. I think there's signs of glaucoma there. Yeah. Look up some glaucoma medicine.
I mean,
there.
if he'd have had that medication, he could have seen the problems coming with Double F, but he couldn't. You know, his vision was cloudy. It was obscured. Anyway, jokes aside. So in the EU expansion, right off the bat, we'll go into the issue with Ryu, which is that Millennium brought in Horo, they brought in Ryu, and obviously we know the hype every time a Korean name, especially real big names like Ryu come in, is that people think not only are they going to do well, but they think they're going to dominate. And so they were playing against Giants, which is the old Spanish team that was in the first split of LCS EU, and essentially were only known for being really bad and losing loads of games, but somehow winning like 2 games off Gambit. That's like their famous claim to fame, is that they somehow...
They beat EG as well, I think, one game.
Maybe in one game, but we all know that EG team sucked anyway. They would fall off pretty hard.
They did at the time.
But okay, so people were thinking, okay, well, if the Millennium team has these new recruits, this game's, you know, they're going to stomp this, it won't be a problem. They lost 2-1. Giants won the series. What can you tell us about the series, Krepo? Did you have similar expectations? Was it going to be easy?
I mean, I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people weren't going to pay much attention to the expansion tournament, because it felt like the results would write themselves, right? The only match that would be in the air was Gamers 2 against and Faculty. But then people pretty much thought like whatever team made it out there was going to lose anyway. So I think H2K, and I think was it Reason that went out as the last team?
Yep.
Yeah. So like H2K is definitely top favorite there. Reason did really well. Just watching the Millennium match against Giants, one of the casters said, you see, they've imported 2 Koreans into the old Millennium style of play, you know, so they're almost forcing them to play alongside the old Millennium style that didn't really work. And if you put 2 people in there that have a hard time communicating with the team, you know, you just paste them into the old style, and that's exactly what happened. You know, not much was happening on the map. There wasn't really much team play. They played for a lot of picks. Even their picks and bans weren't like as strong. And then they came out swinging against the Giants, who did really well in just shutting Rio down. Like the first 2 games, that Frederick, ESL had a stat that he spends 3 minutes and 30 seconds the first 10 minutes of the games on average around mid lane. That's a dirty camper dog if I've ever seen one. He literally, like, you could see it wasn't just like, which lane is he gonna gank? No, it's like, from which side is he gonna gank mid now? And then Pepinero or Pepito or Pepperoni, as the casters were calling him, he ran Ghost on TF that first game, and it was really fun to see. Like, he would just Ghost up with a gold card, lock that guy down, and there was nothing you can do to escape a Ghost TF. And because Elise was constantly there, they would just CC chain Ryu until like he couldn't do anything in the lane. They kept him down, and then the rest of the map wasn't winning hard enough, and eventually, you know, it started snowballing, and then Pepinero would just roam top, roam bot. Like, he controlled those games, and when he played Xerath as well, they would just find somebody, snipe him out, and basically pick Millennium off, and Millennium was playing pick style. And yeah, it was sad to see, because I had such high hopes for Millennium with like 2 Koreans.
Did Ryu underperform? Did this make you think like, oh, it isn't the old Ryu who was like a really good player? Does he look like he's washed up?
I wasn't quite sure. I was talking to I'll just say a mid laner about this game, and at one point they had a Xerath that was 3-0, and they had a DFG Ari on Ryu, and that mid laner was saying like, there's no way non-heal Xerath should ever even live.
Oh, I wonder which mid laner who plays Xerath would have an expert opinion on the Ari match.
Wasn't Froggen.
Oh, okay. Keep
it wasn't Froggen, actually.
Nuke Dog! Bjugson! Okay, keep going, Krepo. I'm just going to see what sticks from your reaction there.
See what sticks, yeah. And he's like, yeah, DFG Ari should just kill that Xerath all the time, and that didn't happen, so Ryu never caught Pepito, and Pepito managed to carry that game. And I didn't watch the 3rd game, but apparently the Giants completely switched their style. And instead of camping mid really hard, they switched it up and surprised Millennium with that. But yeah, Millennium should have smashed that game.
So historically, Millennium's in a lot of trouble. I mean, people have to remember, let me just take the story back to where it starts here, their problems. They were in the first round of the playoffs of last season's thing, okay? And they were favourites. Everyone on the show except me, yeah, I like to bring that up, predicted Millennium would beat SK. They thought that, but instead SK rocked them. Then they got rocked in the 5th place match. Then they got smashed right out. And I think at this point they'd gone like 0-9 or something in those 3 series, you know. Now they're into the expansion, and you look at their lineup, and you're still thinking to yourself, well, look at the talent in this lineup. Like, it's Kevin, is kind of like a super stable guy, a long history of always being a top player. Creaton, even if he's not lived up to the hype of maybe what he had a long time ago, he's still a good player, and he still can be mechanically strong. Now you've got these Koreans added into the mix. On paper, it doesn't really make sense how this team can't at least be in LCS when you have teams like, for example, Copenhagen Wolves or Super Hot Crew still in LCS. Do you have a sense for what this means for Millennium? Do you think this team has to disband?
Yeah, or maybe they just should have recruited like English-speaking players or an analyst and worked on their style, you know. I don't think they played as efficient as they could, both fix and bans, and like just the way they approached the game. And it's surprising to see them go out there like the way they did. But yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen to them now either. Like, are they gonna like still stick together? You know, they must have spent so much money on getting 2 Koreans over. Although Horo really underperformed, like he did not impress at all.
I mean, Kevin in his Facebook post essentially ended it by saying like less LCS means more streaming. So it's made it sound as though like the team is done, essentially, the way it was. Oh, he's done, at least, you know?
Or he might stream for Millennium on some French, I don't know what channel they stream on. I don't think
Usually
they do
Daily
Twitch.
Motion or some shit.
Yeah, Millennium likes their Daily Motion stream, so he might do that, you know? I don't know.
Do you think I oversold some of the players when I mentioned there, Kevin? Like that? Do they still have any star quality to you?
I haven't watched enough LCS, or like like if I really gonna judge a player, I need to like pay attention to them. Kevin's always seemed to me like a super solid laner that you can just rely on, like just like a brick, you know? He's a brick in the top lane. No, he's not gonna go out of his way and smash that lane, but he'll never lose it really hard. He'll show up for the team fights. You can talk to the guy. Cretan seems in my head a little wonky, like a little off and on, but he played well in that series. And then yeah, like I feel like Jerry should have never picked Annie twice. I think he did it twice. I don't know. I hate Annie support. I think it's garbage. I don't think you should be playing it for you get your way in the LCS, but that's just my opinion, you know. Might be wrong there. But it felt like a team with no synergy. I don't think there was very much communication going on, and you need that like right now.
So obviously Monty didn't watch this game, but he referenced there, well, okay, maybe Curse, who is still looking for a mid laner apparently, maybe they pick up Ryu, and not only that, but it can give like Piglet a friend in the team or whatever. I mean, I'm not sure how much of a friend he could be. Like, remember when I made you cry and broke your heart in the final? You're my teammate now. Like, I don't know how that would work, but that's sort of like when aliens in the future take like a lion and a tiger and throw it in a cage. Like, they are the same breed. We will see how they interact. Like, so, but you actually think it could be a real option could Ryu be in Curse, Monty? Is he good enough?
Yeah. Or he was before he switched to jungle and before he went to Europe. But I think he was always very consistent. And I think that'd be a really good start for Curse. He never had, a terribly small champion pool. He's solid. He's solid.
Because I actually have sort of a rant on Ryu, and I won't go super into it here because we don't have that much we can talk about. I'll probably make my own video about it. But the short version is, I actually really dislike the way people talk about Ryu now, because I feel like it's a great example of how people totally rewrite their own opinions that they had in the past based on what's happening now. So if someone sucks now, they like to rewrite history that, well, he probably always sucked, and he maybe people who said he was good were idiots and they didn't know. Like, it's been rewritten now. Monty even sort of rewrote it there, where he said, like, oh, none of the players in KT Bullets were top 3 except Kakao. Like, Ryu, at the end of 2013, was a fucking baller. That guy was insane. His level was really good. Every single series they won, best of 5, used to be him just having at least 1 or 2 games where he just outclassed the other guy. Like, his fucking Zed used to be really good. His Orianna was godlike. His
Orianna was his best champion, for sure.
Dude, I've never seen anyone.
LeBlanc was pretty good as well.
He's Gragas for a while. He had some good games there. The Orianna's the one I want to bring up, because I've never seen a player actually use Orianna as well as he did, in as much as the way he would use the ultimate was like fucking genius. He would never set it off unless you could be got into it, right? He would never.
We talked about that all the time. His ult holding was so good on Orianna. He would always, his patience with the ult was excellent.
Like, the big problem with Orianna players is the really good ones are so good that they throw it preemptively sometimes and they just get nothing, and then actually that's what then turns the fight, because then once that goes off and he gets nothing, then people just dive in and fuck them up. He would literally use the ult, so there was 2 options were going to happen. One, either you went near it and he'd be able to pull you in, or he'd just use it to zone you off that area he didn't want you to go into. And you had no option. It was going to be one of those 2, because the key thing was he had like insane patience that he would just never set it off unless you went in. And what's funny is when you watched it, you thought to yourself, every Orianna player could do this if they wanted. Like, Faker could do that. But they don't, because they're so skilled at hitting it that they still would go with the old approach of just throwing it out there whenever they thought they'd just get a grab and make a gamble, So it was a weird style, but man, it was, for a while it was really effective. So
it was very good.
Listen, I'm not saying he's that player now. Okay, maybe he's burned out, maybe he's not as good, maybe the game caught up with him, maybe the meta changed. A lot of things could have happened, but I feel like people don't give him his just credit, like. His problem was, he got outplayed by Faker in the one moment that was like the biggest of his career. But other than that, he had very solid Korean career.
Yeah,
that was a tongue twister.
Absolutely,
to say that.
That's what I'm saying. He was a very solid player, and he was really consistent. Who's
Curse gonna get otherwise? I'm like,
no idea.
Options.
I mean, why didn't they get Pobelter if there's no one?
Are they gonna get Tabzz?
Flame.
Maybe they can listen to me. Maybe I consulted with them.
Are you gonna be Curse's coach, Duncan?
I am going to join Curse as the mid laner. I'm going to be the player coach. And the thing is, they knew that I had authority because I explained to them like why Viboy was bad and why Corp was bad. So they got rid of those two. Oh, I mean, they both retired of their own accord. And then I told them, like, you know, bring in Piglet, like Pumandu was really bad. And then they were like, okay, I can't even think of a good joke to go with that. I was going to do it. I was probably going to do a joke about the jungler smoking weed or something, but I won't go there. We'll just leave that out there. So another result in the expansion tournament that seemed to cause a lot of furore, but I didn't think it was that big a deal. But here's a great example, Krepo. If you know where people get mad at things, that they in the act of getting mad are sort of feeding into making a thing. Like, you know, if someone's an attention whore online, the real way you destroy them is you just don't pay attention to them. And if someone says, what do you think of that person? You go, I don't. And you just leave it at that. But if the person says, what do you think of that person? And you go, oh, God, I hate him. What an attention whore. I wish he'd just shut up and go away. You're giving him
Do you
attention.
have any experience in this matter?
Not at all. You know, I've never made a blog when I've left a team. I've never tried to sort of like get the public on my side and tell me I've never done anything like that. You know, when I left On Gamers, I did it in a very respectful way. I said these were great people I worked with. Some of it was my fault. Actually, I'm accepting responsibility, and I'm going to try and grow as a person. Like, you know, I know you have experience with that, Krepo. We're both on the same page there. Yeah, we agree. So anyway, the point I was going to make here is, obviously, as a player, Ocelot hasn't been relevant in quite a long time, about a year, until he was asked in LCS. But he always manages to remain relevant due to all these drama, and then also because people always, like, I get the sense now, a lot of people look at Gamers 2 and they want them to lose so they can say, oh, well, Ocelot shit, you know, like, it's like almost like he has anti-fans now. And so this game here, End Faculty against Gamers 2, it's not ridiculous that End Faculty could win, which they did. What's ridiculous is the hype is that, well, since Ocelot has all this money and these resources and his team, he said they're going to be really good, that if they lose then we're all going to jump on Ocelot. Do you know anything about these two teams in the amateur scene over there, Krepo? Like, should either of them have been really good?
I watched the games, and they were like a tactical atrocity. And what struck me the most is because we've been at that point. The way that those games were being played, reminded me of the period after Season 2 Worlds, where Fnatic was like figuring out split push, and they would just split push you all day. And we, for like a couple of months, just had no idea, like, what are they doing? Why are these side lanes randomly like, oh, we're so unlucky. Every time we do something, we have creeps against us on the side lanes. And it really reminded me of that, because when I watched Gamers 2 play, they had this really good split push composition, and they would never move to a side lane. They would never make a lane push. They would never split fucking towers. No, all they did was group. Oh, we have to group and team fight. Oh, it didn't work. Oh, let's group again. Let's team fight again. Oh, okay, we failed. Let's just dive one person first in a team fight and then try to kill them again. Oh no, we lost the game. Okay, let's do that twice in a row now. And it was just a tactical atrocity to watch that match. And I expected it to be like even and have Gamers 2 have the edge, because, you know, they have a gaming house for so long. They've been practicing really hard. They've only been playing on this patch according to Ocelot, so they didn't play 420 at all. But they even had a coach for a while. They had the spat there with LS, but
and they had Broken Shard for a little while.
They had Broken Shard for a while.
They've had the infrastructure, yeah.
I mean, they had the opportunity, and they just failed, you know. And I don't think as many people should be hating on Ocelot as there are. The problem is with Carlos, you know, he just makes a lot of these unfortunate statements, you know. Like right after the loss, he'll go like, "Yeah, out of respect for our teammates, we'll go out of the spotlight right now for respect of the people that are going to play in 20 days." I'm like, dude, just don't make that statement, you know. You know you're going to get, like, fried up. But maybe he's just being really smart, you know. And he knows that, like, there's a saying going, negative publicity is better, or, like, any publicity is better than none, you know. So
there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah, like, whatever, yeah, that one. So maybe he's
the Oscar Wilde quote is the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
Yeah, so maybe this is all a really good ploy on riling people up with, like, these half statements and releases and being cocky before the tournament and saying you're going to deliver and then not deliver and stay in there. But, like, I don't really want to get into that too much. I was just very disappointed at the level of play. And honestly, it doesn't matter who won that game, because from what I saw, either team was going to get absolutely stomped by H2K. And the way Giants played are probably going to take that second spot. And I didn't watch Reason play, so I can't judge for that. But so the way that Gamers 2 match is likely going to be fourth.
In terms of Gamers 2, okay, obviously, Ocelot's always going to be a center of attention because people want to know, is he good, is he bad, and people have very strong opinions. What did you think of Ocelot? I mean, you've been there since the early days with him. Is his level similar to what it used to be?
It's hard to say because everything around him evolved.
What did you think of Ku, this young talent who everyone's been saying was going to be like the new Diamond Proc? So, he's going to be the next great jungler, but he obviously he wasn't old enough before, and now he's had these problems with these teams trying to qualify.
I mean, I can only judge on a few things I see. There was a chat log leaked after the game that said Ku talking to a friend of his, I assume, because the games are pre-recorded, right?
Yeah.
So he said like, "Yo, watch this game 3. It was 1v9 all game." And I watched the game, and it wasn't 1v9. And if it was 1v9, he was definitely not the one. He was probably part of the 9. So, like, he was always like a controversial player, and he seems like a little delusional in that sense. Like, it's okay to play bad. Everyone's gonna have bad games, but you need to understand that like you can improve. And if you're gonna shift the blame on your teammates all the time and find an excuse, like, you're not gonna get anywhere. And as a whole, it doesn't matter what Gamers 2 did or who played what. Their tactics were non-existent. Like, at one point, they were sieging a base, and you were just screaming at your fucking screen. Like, they had this top lane. So there was a wave stacking there all the way at top turret. And they had a Baron buff. And it took that wave 3 minutes to reach the base. And by that time, their Baron buff had expired. They had taken one tower down to half HP. They could have sent Jarvan top, for example, let him push in that wave, completely spread out the wave clear of the opposing team, and just take down all the towers one by one, have the Jack split pushing. And they would start their strategy by split pushing really well, and then once they had the split push going, they would group up and team fight and lose. And it just showed that they had no clue how to play the game.
Why do you think that even very talented players, even ones with long-term experience, have problems with these issues, like not knowing when you're supposed to split push, not knowing then when you're supposed to group? How can it still be a problem in the Western scene?
For us in CLG.EU, for example, we were successful by grouping up, just doing our laning phase, grouping up, team fighting. The other team would be dumb enough to fight us, and we beat them in a fight, right? That's like the legacy. And then, yes, Froggen would be super farmed because he's a god. And that's how we would beat them. So we had never had to resort to any strategy. So at our peak, we would win every game by team fighting. So come season 3, I think, yeah, season 3, we'd be like, yeah, don't worry, guys, we'll get them in a team fight. What happened was teams would just never team fight us anymore. Fnatic would split push all day. We wouldn't even recognize them. We think, yeah, okay, we didn't lose because we never got a good team fight, So in your head, you're justifying that, the one strategy you're always good at, you never got that, that one good fight, or it didn't work here. And maybe people are just delusional enough to think that the reason they're losing is just bad luck, or they don't recognize the strategy, and they don't have anybody to point it out to them. Especially with veteran players, like, you need to point it out to them black and white. So like, this is why this team is winning. Look at this. Look at Korea. This is why they're winning. Look at what they're doing. Why don't we do this? Try it. Like, see, okay, this is where you make the mistake. This is where you should have gone top. You should have gone bottom. You should have pushed that. You shouldn't have gone for this fight, for example. If nobody tells you, it's really hard sometimes to step out of that picture and look objectively at what you're doing. Because we said that before on the show. Everybody has their own reason for doing stuff, right? You can have a game go wrong with 5 people being right, but none of them are playing towards a team objective. And then, yeah, then you're fucked.
Monty, I've got a question along these lines, okay? To be fair to players who are pro players, because it makes them sound a bit like idiots if I say like even top level players don't know sometimes when to split push, etc. Is there a degree to which, in the moment of being in the game, it's hard to recognize one of your favorite terms, the win conditions, like what you should do now that would be optimal? Is there some reason why even great players who, if I say, listen, the reason why I'm saying this is because if you ever take any player out of LCSNA and put him on the analyst desk, they always are awesome. They're always picking apart what's going wrong and this is what they could have done. But those same players then go into the game next week and they make the same problems, So can you explain what the issue is here?
Absolutely. It's hard to play the game and be focused on what's in front of your face in the lane and know exactly what's going on the other side of the map in order to make the proper shot call. That's why communication is so important. And sometimes things don't get heard because people are talking over each other. There's like a million things that can go wrong. Certainly, I mean, from my perspective, even when I'm just observing games as a caster or as an analyst, it takes a significant amount of my attention and brain power to decide what the best course of action is. And I don't even have to play the game at the same time. So I would say it's extraordinarily difficult to do that. And it boggles my mind that teams can get as good at it as Samsung White can, where they're outthinking me and while they're playing the game.
especially since strategy right now is going 2 minutes ahead of time right now, right? If you want to set up an elaborate split push, that happens when you see that come to fruition. That's already happened 90 seconds ago when that top laner stacked that wave, when that guy went mid, when they warded that dragon area, etc.
Or even lane swaps and stuff like that, because you have to be prepared for a basically infinite number of branching scenarios that could happen. And depending on the particular conditions of minion waves and matchups when the lane swap begins, you have to know the 5 things that you can do right there and how you're going to set them up. And then as the enemy adapts, then it's crazy. It's like very complicated. Chess.
Yeah. while trying to be mechanically proficient and lost it. That's why I have so much respect for people who shot call. Like every year goes by, I get more respect for people who can play the game and shot call at the same time. You know, like I can't lead a team to victory just shot calling. I can't do that. I can feed information and I can feed off a shot caller and work together with him to like get where I want to be. But like single-handedly shot calling a team like the way High does for Cloud9. If you see that they just crumble without, like, we need High to tell us what to do, you know, that's super impressive, and I think vastly underrated right now.
So I don't think it's underrated by the pros and the people who are deep in the scene, but I think the fans do underrate it, yes.
Another European topic was it was announced that Deman and Joe Miller will leave Riot, so they won't be casting LCS, and then, I mean, Joe technically to some degree worked for ESL already, so I guess they're going to both...
he did work entirely for ESL.
Okay, so they're both...
He was like on loan to Riot.
So they're both joining ESL, and the idea now is it's been hinted that they might do other games. They might do some League of Legends, maybe they'll do CSGO. It hasn't been exactly announced yet. But that's not even the real news. Like, that's news in itself. Okay, there's not too much to say about that. But within this, there was a controversy that the story originally was going to be published by Richard Lewis. He'd found all the information out, and he was in a position where he could just leak the story. He could go live with it tomorrow, and he has his sources and everything. But instead, he attempted to reach out to Riot and ESL, and what he wanted to do was make it like, okay, it's sort of like, okay, guys, like, listen, I could beat you on this story already. I've got the information. I could just go with it now. But instead of making it like a loss for you, why don't we kind of like join forces and you give me like maybe a quote or something, and we do something so it's official in a way, and I get some cachet because I get the official announcement, but you guys also get to have some say in how it's released, okay? So the idea was he wanted to cooperate with them. And Riot, I think it was Riot essentially at the end of the day, decided to just... They heard this was happening. Okay,
here's what happens. ESL, according to Richard Lewis's story, ESL told this to Riot, right? They alerted Riot to the fact that this story was coming out. So as I understand it, the way it went was Richard Lewis contacted Deman and Joe. Deman and Joe referred them to the ESL press person. They then worked with ESL, and then ESL went and told Riot. So I don't think there was direct communication between Riot and Richard Lewis on this issue.
But the problem here is that Riot then just brought the news out themselves. So they jumped the gun and they got ahead, and Richard Lewis got nothing out of this whole story. Now, what do you think on this, Monty?
Well, not only did he get nothing,
even more.
He lost more because he leaked an email that was leaked to him by D-Man by messing up and posting the recipient list. He quickly corrected it, but that ended up getting out, which of course is really a shitty thing to do. And I don't think it was intentional or malicious. I think he was just mad and too hasty and didn't review it properly, which is definitely his fault. But obviously that unfortunately hurt D-Man too. And we need people who will be willing to leak things to journalists to make sure that there is
checks
some
and
sort
balances
of
and
there are checks and balances. Yeah. So I hope that doesn't deter anybody from leaking things to reputable journalists in the future, of which I consider Richard Lewis one of them. I think the biggest weirdness for me here is not that they kind of stabbed Richard Lewis in the back on the agreement. Like, obviously they want to make their own announcements over that kind of stuff. I think the mistake that was made is that now no journalist will ever make a deal with ESL or Riot again. So now they're just going to get their shit leaked faster. Whereas if they play ball with these guys, they may gain some allies and be able to, bring out these announcements in a way where they would have some sort of quote or some sort of say or cooperation in how it went out. Because now nobody's going to care at all anymore, and they shouldn't, because these companies have proven to be unreliable in terms of working with journalists on these leaks, which is lame because the scene would be better off if they worked together. But for me, the weirdest thing was, let me make a comparison to this. When a player in esports leaves his old team and immediately goes to a new team, usually it's the new team that is making an announcement about where this player is going, right? Sometimes if there's a gap, like a player like today, Flame left CJ. But Flame hasn't announced a new team, and to my knowledge, Flame does not yet have a new team, so he's just kind of making himself available. But if a player immediately goes to a new team, the old team doesn't tell everybody where that player is going to the new team.
So Fnatic didn't say Rekkles is leaving, it said it was Alliance.
Here's an
Rekkles
announcement.
was joining.
Rekkles is going to Alliance, Fnatic says, right? That's a little bit weird. And I don't think, my personal opinion, that it is Riot's move to get involved when people leave their staff in the same way as we would with a player of the team and go to ESL. That is ESL's announcement to make.
I feel there's two announcements. There's one side, like as a player, like when you leave a team, usually the team will say goodbye to you if you leave on decent terms. Sure. And then you get an accepting announcement on the other team. Because the Rekkles Alliance drama, that's an exception because everybody knew that was going to happen and they were just waiting to put the ink on a paper. But like normally you'd go like, Fnatic wishes goodbye to Rekkles, Alliance welcome to Rekkles, right? And the same way, like I think Riot wanted to say like, okay, hey, we're not firing Joe and Deman. We actually would love to work with them, but just like the way it's aligned right now, they have better opportunities for them. And then ESL wants to welcome them to make sure that story is spun the right way. And sometimes corporations or organizations will try to cover up a story by spinning it in a certain way. But I don't think there's much spin to this story to merit it being leaked. That's my point.
Yeah. No. I think the leak from Richard Lewis is obviously beneficial to the journalists because they need to. That's their job, and they need to by making these kind of announcements and getting this information. That's their function, right? That's their function. So you can't blame him for his function. But I do find it odd that Riot was so heavily involved in something that was really, in my opinion, ESL's announcement to make.
Like really? My issue with this is that
a 2-year-long Riot caster like leaving Riot, you know, at the peak. Like I could understand why they'd want to explain why. I mean,
I get it, but at the same time, that explanation is going to come out in the ESL announcement as well.
Yeah, perhaps.
And like, also, it seems as though from the leaked email that they jumped the gun on ESL's agreement with Richard. It seems like there was an agreement that Richard had with ESL, and that the terms of that agreement were changed because of what Riot wanted. And I think that's weird too.
Here's the issue as I see it, which is that Riot is entirely within their rights. If someone tells them, oh, someone's going to leak this news, if they want to and it's some news involving them, they could just leak it themselves. They could announce it first. That's fine, okay. But what is the reason why the person's told you that? Do you think Richard Lewis just told Riot, oh, by the way, I have some news about you that I'm going to leak. Do you want to leak it for me? No, he's obviously saying it with an implicit agreement of, why don't we cooperate on this? I've won already.
Talk to Riot.
No, but through the other method, indirectly through ESL. So what he's essentially said to ESL is, I have you dead to rights here. I have the information. I can go live now and I win in my own way. But here's a way that you can not lose. I can win and you can not lose. We can work together to a degree. And yeah, you lose in as much as you don't get to make the announcement. But you get to have some control over it. You maybe even get to say something involved in it so that people can't say, I just spun it my way and I put only my terms in it. You can have a say in it. And maybe, you know what? If we work together, I've even seen cases, because I've got some background journalism on this, where this has happened before with Riot when I used to work at On Gamers, and there have been cases in the past. This is why I'm not as confident with Monty that now everyone will just leak at Riot shit and not work with them. I've known cases in the past where Riot did have an agreement with a journalist, and they still would just sometimes decide, you know what, we're not giving you this one, as though like they had the control, even though the journalist came to them like, I've got this information, and they'd just go with it themselves, or they'd publish it themselves. Other times they would work with the journalist, and usually, by the way, sometimes the journalist might even trade the announcement. This is what people don't understand. It's actually a benefit to the journalist where you can both win. The best way you can do it is you go to someone like Riot, okay, and you say to them, I have a story about Deman and Joe leaving. Now listen, maybe you guys want to announce that yourselves, in which case I'll give you that announcement. I won't leak it, but instead give me something. So maybe then they give him the first email, the first interview with Joe, or or they give an
yeah.
interview with Nick Allen, whatever it is. You trade it, or you give them something. The idea is it's a quid pro quo. Both parties are getting something from this. Because, for example, a leaked story doesn't have the same cachet as a story that's leaked, but it's also worked with the people and it's got their official statement. So both sides can benefit here. Now, the big problem here is a lot of journalists aren't in a great position to get a lot of stuff aside from just straight leaks. So I think a lot of them will still try and work with Riot on this, which is actually the part where I'm getting annoyed. Because to me, this is where you have to take a hard line if you're a journalist. Like, there's no two ways about it. There's nothing really that's benefited Riot in making this announcement the way they did. It's essentially been done to be a bit spiteful towards Richard Lewis. Like, I don't know why, but they've chosen to not cooperate with someone who's asking to cooperate. It's not like he was just going to leak their shit and he's doing it without even helping, and he's like the enemy.
We know that because he agreed with ESL to wait until after IEM San Jose so that he wouldn't steal the thunder from the event and create a bunch of unnecessary drama before Joe and Lee Deman cast at IEM.
So this is a case that I've actually been involved in myself when I was at On Gamers, because I used to have quite a hard line. I would say to the people within our organization that break this kind of news and make these deals, because I would get sick of them having the same staff meeting every week, right, where they'd say, someone would say, how did that deal with Team X go? And they'd go, oh yeah, actually they promised me they'd wait till Sunday so I could do my story, but then they leaked it on Saturday night and I got nothing. And after so many times, I just said to these guys, right, we have to take a hard line with these people now. It's not that we need them to get the story. We have the story. We have won. We have them banged to rights and there's nothing they can do. They don't know we're going to leak it and we can put the story out first. Instead, we're doing them a favor by trying to make the esports industry better and make these things official and all cooperate and have proper links. So at the end of the day, if they're not willing to play ball, the only way to get back at them in a real way and us benefit is that we have to start leaking without talking to them. And we have to even go to them and say, listen, I didn't want to leak it, but you won't work with me. And so until you cooperate, I'm going to have to leak it. And I'm not going to come to you first because that's the only way you'll kind of realize. Because at the moment, the big problem is the biggest organizations live in a world where they think they dictate these things. They think if they help you on a story, they're doing you a favor. As I've outlined it here, it's the other way around. The journalist has you banged to rights. You can't do anything unless he tells you he's going to leak this information. So actually, he wins if he wants. He's now allowing you a chance not to lose. That's the way these people have to get their brains rewired. If it doesn't happen, one day these companies will be in big trouble because everything will get leaked.
Well, and also, it just came out shitty in the end anyway for everybody. And here's another interesting thing. So ESL talks to Richard Lewis and they say, okay, we're going to do this collaboratively, but we want you to wait until after IEM San Jose. We don't, we want this announcement to come after. We want our event to be, first and foremost in people's mind, not a controversy about who's going to be casting League of Legends and blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. But then Riot steps in and they say, we're going to make this announcement and we're going to make it now. So ESL doesn't even get what ESL wants because now we had the same shit as if Richard Lewis had just leaked it. Right? I suppose there was a more official announcement, but what was that official announcement? It was an announcement that...
They did have Joe and Deman make their posts, though.
Okay, but where were they? It was Joe on his Facebook and Deman in a self-Reddit post.
On Nobody Facebook wants... as well, I think, no?
I think he just did it on Reddit, dude.
Let me check. Let's find out.
I'm just saying that we could... Well.
Yeah,
okay, Facebooked it as well, but there was one on Reddit that he was just a self-post. But it's like, we could have had an interview with these guys. They're really good casters, obviously. They're great casters. We could have had an interview with these guys describing their new positions, doing things a little more in-depth after IEM, potentially with Richard. But ESL didn't get what ESL wanted. Because we know what they wanted because they made a deal with Richard Lewis. And Riot got them like writing Facebook posts.
Here's the part I don't get
Richard
as well.
Got nothing.
Here's what I don't get, right? Usually the reason why a lot of teams in the past wanted to do the news is for obvious reasons. Like if EG signs a StarCraft player, they want the hits on the signing to go to their site and to see the sponsors. Okay, I get all that. That's why they, if they had a choice, wouldn't allow leaks. But what doesn't make sense here is Riot is not making their money off ad revenue. All they've done here is fuck a journalist in the scene who's trying to work hard out of his money. And essentially, Riot, with this statement, is sort of saying we don't support journalists in this scene. If we're aware that you're going to have a story out first, fuck you, we'll just jump the gun on you and leak it. And we won't gain anything particularly great from it. And in fact, since we're not professional journalists, we might not even make the best out of the story. We might not add in the statements and the interviews in it. We might just rush it out the door as just this person's left and that's it. Whereas a professional journalist would know how to structure it, what sort of details people would want in the first instance they get to it. Because not everyone's going to go to Facebook and Reddit and stuff. Some people will only see the post, you know. So to me, listen, going forwards, this doesn't have to be this way. These things can be fixed. Lessons can be learned. Mistakes were made. You don't have to be like Doublelift and keep repeating the mistakes and keep saying that line there. You can just fix the mistakes. But you can't set this precedent that you're going to behave that way. Because listen, Richard Lewis is probably nicer than some journalists. If you fucked me over like that, I would just leak everything forever. And in fact, I'd become like the #1 leaker of your shit. And eventually you'd have to come to me crawling on broken glass in sackcloth, gnashing your teeth and wailing and showing penance to the Lord Thorin that you dared to, you know, you see where it's going. If someone was to get... That was a hypothetical there, Krepo. I'm not actually sort of a bitter person like that at all. It was play acting. I was just theater of the mind, my friend.
Actor,
what do you think?
Yeah. For me, it's really hard to get into this topic because, like,
you want that Riot money? Yeah, I get it.
People that know, yeah, exactly. People that know my history know that I've had spats with Richard Lewis in the past, and even Slasher. I've been on teams that have shit leaked, and then I'm likely to end up at Riot one day. So my opinion here is probably too biased. Okay. Well, the only
Krepo, be a force for good. Change things once you get there.
The only thing I want to touch on is saying that Riot can't get that the interview quality. They have people hired whose sole job is to be press consultants, etc. Those people know their shit when it comes to interviews because they do interviews all the time. It's literally their job. So to say they don't have the people to do that, and then to speak on Riot's side, possibly why they said no, I don't want to work with Richard Lewis because Richard Lewis has been pretty spiteful towards Riot in the past. But
they didn't have those interviews in the post. And you know the reason why? They were too busy trying to rush it out door to screw this guy over.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
So that's the thing. It didn't benefit themselves. If they'd have done it themselves properly, I'd have a bit more room for them. You know, they kind of didn't get. They got the worst of all worlds there.
Everybody lost. Richard Lewis didn't get what Richard Lewis wanted. Riot didn't get what they wanted, and ESL didn't get what they wanted.
I think
everybody got screwed.
Part of it is because there has been a negative connotation from Lewis in the past towards Riot. Whether it was right or wrong, I'm not even going to jump in that shit.
Sure.
I understand. I can understand why on short term they wanted to screw him over. Okay. I think long term it might come to bite him.
Richard Lewis screwed Deman over. I mean, he didn't. I mean, he fucked us up too. He lost his job as SE2.
He's no longer on the desk for StarCraft 2 now. So everybody lost. Unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, we got a solid 20 minutes out of this with some good content. We're probably going to get some good hits off this. I'm making ad revenue like a motherfucker. And I tell you what.
You're sending me a check, Thorin.
Oh, I'm not. Actually, we don't make any ad revenue yet. That was a lie. I don't know why I said that. This is pro bono. It's an altruistic thing that you call on this show. Yeah, I don't know what I was talking about there. So let's go on to my...
The point is everybody fucked up in this situation. There's nobody who won out of this. Everybody made mistakes, and the whole point that I wanted to try and make is that going forward, it doesn't have to be like this, guys. Let's just all work together.
Now I know how the CLG talks used to go after those games.
We can be friends, guys. We can win this game together. T15. Team, please. No?
And then the Skype call was hung up, and they were like, "Fuck that asshole! I'm just picking fucking Lucian. I don't even care, dude. He said pick Sivir, but I'm not pushing down towers. I'm going for kills. I'm dominating this lane, boys. Double lift on 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Anyway, no, but now we're going to go on to... We've done all that really boring talk about the West and people who speak English and eat American sliced ham cheese, singles of Kraft cheese like you guys so you can relate to them in game or something. Now we're going to talk about the most boring alien sci-fi realm within League of Legends called South Korea, and it's so boring. I mean, these guys, they don't even post on Facebook. Some of them don't even have Facebook accounts. I don't know what the fuck they're doing with their lives, quite frankly.
I don't think they've ever made a vlog.
Well, I will give him credit. There is one guy, Helios, who used to talk mad shit on his teammates when he used to leave teams as well, and he used to just drop dime on everyone and say, this guy didn't do what I wanted and that. So in some way, and actually, believe it or not, he then ended up on a team with Krepo, and I was like, oh, Karma, you have such a fickle and interesting way of working your magic. And then it was like a battle, who could drop dime on the other first as soon as they left. It's like they were both part of a drug ring, and then they were trying to get diplomatic, they were trying to get immunity from the feds, but you got to give us more. Krepo's telling us all the shit about Altec, and he's like, okay, I've got info on InnoX. He's only played one game in the last week. Okay, keep talking, piggy, squealed.
we give you a deal.
Okay, we'll just leave that there, Krepo. We'll just leave that hanging out there like
Honestly,
that.
I cut the wrong deal. Look where I am now. I don't even have a job, and I'm stuck on this shitty talk show with no ad revenue.
This is what you get, boy. It's what you get.
That's what happens when you become irrelevant, Krepo. Join us.
Alltech sends his regards. He's enjoying that new double bed he's got in the EG mansion.
He's sleeping in my bed, wearing my leftover clothes that I left there, using my weights to get
I'm
buff.
the Krepo now.
Yes. Look at me. Okay.
So a lot of these issues in Korea are going to be about players, either the official rosters for OGN, or we've had more official announcements of players going to China. So which do you want to do first, OGN or the China?
I have a fun that it actually happened while we were doing this show.
Okay.
China has announced that each organization can only have one team in the LPL and one team in the LSPL, meaning that World Elite, who has two teams qualified for the LPL currently, is going to have to drop one of their teams. And this also affects other LPL teams, because I think that a lot of this Korean buying frenzy, like Vici Gaming, who bought Dandy, Sketch, Mata, and Heart, but who can only field two of them, according to...
I mean, buying Mata and Heart now looks like a bit of a bad move.
Yeah, well, Sketch and Heart maybe. But anyway, the point is that some of these teams that may have hoped to split Koreans, because they can only have two foreign players, just like in LCS on a team. If they wanted to like use two on one team and two on the other team, now they can't have both of them in the LPL together. So we may see further sales of Korean players, or maybe dropping. I don't really know what's going to happen. This all is very sudden. Like I said, it literally happened like while we were talking on this show. Kelsey Moser was tweeting about it. So that's an interesting development in some of these Korean players going to China, and may reverse the tide of Korean players across the ocean a little bit.
Right, let's do the China ones first then. So
Dandy, Sketch, Mata, and
the one that we already
Vici.
knew. Okay, that's one to Vici Gaming. By the way, if anyone doesn't know, Vici Gaming is like, they're mainly known for Dota. Actually, they have a very good Dota 2 team.
Good Dota team.
But as a result, people should realize it's a big organization. Like, for example, okay, in China, Invictus Gaming has been up and down. Haven't really been a top level team, but they've always been a huge organization. They had a great Dota team, so you have to realize
they won the international.
What's different over there is that you can't look at a team's results in LPL essentially and know how big the organization is, how much money they have, because some of the teams are bigger and smaller in ways that you wouldn't imagine, So Vici get Dandy and Mata. The main story is they get Dandy and Mata. So if they wanted, they could put Dandy and Mata on the same team, and they could get exactly what we've talked about on past shows, Monty, which is like the two best Vision players on the same team at the same time, which then makes like an impossible. You can't overcome that almost. What do you think of if they were to put them both on the same team?
Well, also communication issues would be lessened, because they would just inherently have more information. So likely they're going to be a pretty good team. Yeah, they probably will be pretty good.
They'd be like the new exception to the rule. What Royal Club was last year. Perhaps they will prove it again this year. Oh, you don't need communication. All you need is the world's best support and one of the best junglers to ward up the entire map, so people can ping their way to victory.
Do you have any?
Yeah.
We'll see. And also, we haven't seen a player who's really been able to stay at the level. I mean, Dandy and Mata have both done a pretty good job, but they may burn out pretty soon, just because of that tends to be what happens to teams that win Worlds, is that they can't sustain that level for very long. So they may just be more interested in, the money and chilling in China for streaming. Who knows?
Going down to the KTV, getting a few of those ladies, getting a bottle service. Banging out some Korean hits. I see what you're getting there, Monty.
If they live in China though, I imagine it's a different culture, different language for sure.
I believe they eat with chopsticks.
Jesus Christ, that's
Keep going, Krepo. Keep going.
Can I make that statement where I am not associated with any of the statements?
Yeah, okay.
I solemnly swear. Yes, they do eat with chopsticks, and they also play a video game called League of Legends. But I think that's where the commodities end. But yeah, so we don't know what's gonna happen with them. I mean, Mata will always be good, right? Even if he drops down half a level, well, I hope I'm not wrong, but he was so far ahead. He was so good. He can't be bad.
So I have a question along those lines then, Krepo. One of the reasons, believe it or not, I actually was excited to see Mata go to China is because initially we didn't know he'd join the same team as Dandy. So part of it is I actually wanted to see, okay, let's see Mata without Dandy. Like, let's see what the impact would be, because obviously the combination of the two is really awesome for the vision. Do you have any sense for what this will be like? What do you think of Mata as a player? And do you see, did he have some kind of extra advantage if he gets to have Dandy there?
Well, I don't see. So if he'd go alone, you'd have to look at how the game's going to evolve. So from a support point of view, I don't see that many changes coming in, except that he might have to play some melee supports if Riot never patches the level 1 camps, and then vision stays roughly the same. So his qualities will still be qualities in the next season. Sure, if you have to communicate with a different jungler, he might struggle. And we might see Mata finally get caught one time warding, The unthinkable might happen. But if he gets Dandy there, unless Dandy adjusts badly or poorly to the new jungle meta game, new jungle changed a lot, new champion picks become viable, old picks may not be viable anymore. That might be the question mark. But in sync, their vision control and their objective timing should still be there, Dragon is still very important. Baron is still very important. Sure, timings might be different. How many people you need to do it might be different, but the core sense of the game hasn't changed as drastically as it did from one season to the other. Because removing oracles, introducing trinkets, that was a humongous change. You had to completely switch around your playstyle, back then, if you were a mediocre support, you could just buy 20 wards, place 10 of them in the right spots, 10 of them in the wrong spots, and you'd still be doing your job. Right now, you have to nail those wards 3 apiece in the right spots to lit up the entire map, together. And they did that, so they can do that next season too. The end of my rant.
Okay. Monty, in this particular scenario, just as a tangent, since he was talking about the new patches, etc., do you have any kind of concerns as to... I know one of the big deals for you has always been objective control and how you play the map. There's been a lot of debate about the dragon buffs and how they will affect, for example, the pushing power and those sorts of things. What is your sense for that at the moment? Do you have any concerns that could be overpowered, or it'll be too much of a focal point, or?
I think what we're seeing right now, just from the what I've seen from the scrims, is that at the current point in time, poke mid laners are actually really good right now, and the reason why is because if you have a split pushing team comp, they're usually, unless you have really good Zed players, not so capable of team fighting. And because team fighting around Dragon and Baron, because of these new buffs, is so powerful at the moment, that you really just need somebody to poke or do long range damage. So you could have a powerful team fighter that, let's say, that doesn't have quite so much poke, like Orianna, that's more like a team fight champion. Okay, that would also work. But the thing is now, because of the new Baron buff in particular, and the way it buffs the minion waves, if the other team it gives them a lot harder time wave clearing. So you have more time when you siege after you get Baron to poke the enemy down at a turret, and that means that these poke mid laners are really strong right now. Xerath, TF, Ahri to a certain degree. These are a lot of the champions, basically poke champions, are quite strong right now.
Monty, you know how timing is everything in life? So if you have a poke mid laner, and then you have a team that likes to team fight around Baron, and you know how to split push effect, CLG, what could have been, Monty? If you'd have just been a year late, what could have been?
Well, I don't think I think I was a little bit incorrect about the split pushing thing, just because it does seem like teams are more concerned with, like I said, some of these more poke oriented mid laners right now, as opposed to split push assassins. But it is interesting to see that meta game developing, and I think we probably will see a lot of that. I mean, and also because Corki's really strong right now too, so we see Corki being a really high priority pick for the same reason. First off, other ADs got nerfed. Second off, Corki's really good at
dragon fights
and dragon fights early on, and Rumble's still really good.
I'm really looking forward to how it changes the lane swaps with the new jungle. I have no idea how you can do a jungle in the new jungle. Because it doesn't happen in solo queue.
With the lane following, yeah. I mean, actually, I don't really think that's changed a whole hell of a lot.
Just the XP amounts. They give more, right? Early, normal camps compared to buffs. I don't know. There's new dynamics coming in, so that's the only thing. I do think it's really hard for now. Harder now to turtle. There are options against turtling.
Oh yes, it's way harder.
So games can end like bam. You know, you get a Baron, you siege down the entire base.
Yes.
Like it's good. I like it.
I think it's a little too snowbally right now because that makes Baron, I think, too important. I think the Barons, in terms of the minion wave buffing, is going to have to be scaled back a little bit.
You have the problem though. The cannon creep will never go into the base. You know, the buffed cannon creep will sit there poking at your tower, but it'll never get tower aggro, so you can't actually go and hit the tower. It'll just sit there outside the base, hitting the tower slowly for like 2% every time. So it's actually annoying. I think that should actually be changed because the range is too big. It's basically
so basically you can't pull cannon aggro to get it off your tower with the increased range.
Well, no, for the team sieging, you know, like if you have a cannon minion, you want that cannon minion to go into base, tank 6 tower shots, especially when it's empowered. But it will never go into the base because it'll stand there sitting in front of that fucking tower, just shooting peanut like missiles, and then some Ziggs will eventually clear it with AoE. So that's the only issue I have with the improved waves.
Okay, so some other moves we've got in the China realm still is that Imp joined LGD. Now
he's the only Korean player we know who's joined LGD at this point.
Now that means Imp's going completely on his own. So again, we get to see another scenario, which was there was always the debate of like, is Imp better because he's with Mata? Like, what would Mata be like with a different AD carry? Imp on his own, Monty, will he still be a world-class AD carry?
I think jury's out on that one. We will find out. He's been with Mata for a really long time.
He was good though before Mata. People forget that. He used to be the one guy who was good on that.
He was
white
good before
team,
Mata, you know? But Mata really did, I think, elevate him.
Now, Krepo, you wouldn't know anything about the bias of believing that maybe a support player made the AD carry better and he really brought him best. And that guy wouldn't be as good without me. I mean, without the support player. What do you think on this topic?
I don't think at Worlds Imp was like one of the best. Like every player showed vulnerabilities, but so did Imp, right? It felt like Mata like patched up a lot of them. So we'll see if he learns from that. And we don't know who do you know who he's playing with? Is he playing with a known support at all?
PYL.
Actually, the support he plays with is supposedly very good. People often hype him. He's like a very strategical guy. I think he gets quite a lot of hype.
If he has like a similar player to Mata, you know, maybe it can work. Honestly, I don't know enough to like make a call whether Imp will be good or bad next season, but I think it'll be interesting to follow for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I feel similarly to Krepo. I don't have a good read on that.
So Save. Oh, by the way, I'll just put in the context because people might want to know who's Save. Save is someone who in Monty's book was like sort of top 5 or 6 in the world for Worlds, and he said that he was going to dominate the top lane and he was going to be the one carry top laner who no one could stand up to, including Gagoing, and that's exactly how it turned out, and Monty was right with all his predictions again, and we applaud him for always being on the money. He totally didn't get his shit pushed in by Gagoing, who he then made a star, and then now he's gone to Invictus Gaming, apparently also as Fly has. Now, Invictus Gaming, Monty... Yeah, exactly. That Bulgarian guy. So the Save going to IG, bizarrely, makes sense in a weird way because their historical top laner was PDD, who was known as like the carry guy who wants to play the jacks, that sort of thing, and just carry. So this seems like a good fit on the surface, Monty.
I agree. I think it's an interesting change. We'll see what comes of it. I do think stylistically it's a good one. Fly going is interesting too. A lot of people don't know much about Fly. Probably he was the mid laner for the Jin Air Stealths. He actually was developing quite fast as a player and had a really good Twisted Fate. And I think it was coming into his own as a mid laner, kind of a young rising talent. So, but Zitai is on the team, so I'm not really sure what to make of that. And he's been on that team forever.
But hasn't that always been the... I think Zitai has always been the problem with their team, is that he's this guy where everyone says he's now, sometimes he's awesome, sometimes they claim he has motivation issues, and what's funny is he's a guy who's like, he might not even be 18 yet, and yet people say he's burned out because he has been playing top level for 3 or 4 years.
He was like 15, yeah.
So that's the real question there, is do they keep him? I think on paper, IG's always had good players on paper, so I think on paper they could be one of the best of these Korean moves, you know. Another one, Monty. So Deft, we already got last week. Deft went to EG. Well, now Pawn has joined him on EG. Now
EDG.
EDG.
Oh, dear.
Thank God.
Cowboy.
Thank God. Okay.
Could you imagine?
Yeah. So Pawn goes to EDG. Monty, I don't know if you remember the broadcast. It was that bit that was going on before you would come on and then say the jokes and all that sort of thing with Krepo. So when in the broadcast, people would say things like, Pawn is the best mid laner in the world. You know, he is just, he's so many champions this tournament. He's dominated. I heard people even calling for Pawn to be potentially an MVP of the tournament. What do you actually think of Pawn, the player?
I think he's dimensionalized a lot, actually, over the last year. And he's kind of broken out of his more supportive mid laner shell into a more carry-oriented mid laner when he can step up to that role if need be. And it's been really fun for me to watch him as a player because he literally could only play mid Ezreal and Fizz back when he was on MIG Blitz. No, MIG Blitz.
Oh,
this
okay.
is before Samsung picked him up, when he was under the ID One Suck, and he really didn't have. He was good at those champions, but he didn't really have much else. And then Samsung picked him up, and he's developed quite a lot. So outside of a team where he has Dandy and Mata really helping him control mid with wards, though, I'm not sure how well he's going to do. He's another one like Imp that I think the jury's a little bit out on. And Deft isn't going to provide that same kind of support for him. And also, Deft and Pawn used to play together to kind of average levels of success. Before Blue started, they made the role swap with Dade going over, and that made Blue really good. And Pawn I don't think is as good at team fighting with AoE champions as Dade is. And I think that was a really good synergy that Dade and Deft had. So we'll see if Pawn and Deft can get it back.
So Krepo, these really are world-class players. You know, these were on like World Championship, if not the champions, then World Championship level teams. You know, if they're going to new teams, which potentially could be worse, or they'll have these issues, are you skeptical they'll be at their level before? Do you think any, like, if you had to say Pawn on Deft, do you think one of these guys is like a good shoe-in to do well and he'll flourish in China? What are your thoughts?
I have like the first thing that springs like into my mind is like, what's the infrastructure like? For one, I don't know how Samsung, like, they seem to have a really good infrastructure with like coach for each team, head coach, you know, like.
Yeah, but those coaches are gone. The only coach that's left is the Samsung Blue coach.
Yeah, but like, not in the Samsung org, but is there any of them going with them? No,
not that's been announced. All might go somewhere, I think.
Because like, I feel a lot of how these players will depend on like the support they get. You know, will they be left to their own device just to like sit there in isolation? Will they get a translator? Will they get like a known coach that will just bring Korea to China, you know, and force like the 3 Chinese players in those teams to play Korea style, or will Korea have to adapt to China? Like, there's a lot of question marks, and honestly, I haven't like followed their careers in depth enough to know, oh yeah, this player obviously is going to thrive in this metagame. Like, they're just really solid players, but we've seen every year solid players win worlds and then fall off incredibly hard. So, like, if you look at Pumandu, you know, he was at the top of the game at one point, and then took a break. He came back, and he was nowhere close to the level required. And yeah, so we have really big question marks. But it'll be interesting. I wonder if the Chinese level, with all the imports of all these Korean top tier players, will it get higher than Korea, or will Korea just find some raw talent, cultivate that, put that in the system, and produce another world class team?
I think it'll be like 50-50. I think there's so many experiments going on here. At least one has to work, if not one or two, you know. So one or two could work, and they could be like, could now potentially really win worlds. But I also think likewise on the Korean side, okay, not all these new guys are going to work, not all these new combos are going to work, but all they need again is one or two to be like what Korea is every time, like a couple of top teams that really can beat everyone. And so it might not end up in such a different place from before, but I actually think for the Korean side, I'm less worried. I think they'll get enough top teams eventually by the end of the year.
Yeah,
it's more the Chinese side. Like, will the Chinese get at least one team that could really win? Because let's face it, Royal Club couldn't really have won the final.
No, and also
it's very low chance.
Very low chance. Also, the other thing to consider too is how many of these players are going to return to Korea after one season in the LPL to return for summer, because odds are some of these players are going to get frustrated. They're not going to be able to deal with the cultural stuff, and they're going to bounce back to Korea.
And by the way, Monty, maybe some of them even have planned that. Maybe this is the move. Like, the way you get a lot more money is you go to China. Hey, maybe you even dominate in China and playing potentially weaker teams or players. Then some team like SKT or Najin or whatever team needs whatever, a jungler or support player, and they say, listen, we'll pay you whatever you want. Like, just come back. We need you for Worlds. Like, that would be the time to get your price to the max, I think.
Exactly. And because a lot of these Korean teams now may be thinking, well, we can get some, you know, we'll just draw on the deep Korean talent pool. We'll get some up and coming like amateur players. We'll groom them. Some of those players won't work out. Some of them will. Then you'll have holes in your lineup. Hey, this guy's over in China. He doesn't really like his gig. We'll bring him back over. Could happen. Also, we don't even, I keep saying this, but we don't even know where Rookie and Kakao are right now, and that deal's gone kind of weird from what we understand. So how many of these other deals are going to go kind of weird, and these players may even end up in Korea by the time January rolls around? We're just in preseason for the next month.
Or even worse, NA.
No, or NA, you know.
Plus, I mean, the reason I brought that up is because I already know, like, actually, I don't want to reveal it publicly, but I have to, Krepo. Like, Krepo actually told me the same thing, right? The only reason he left EG is because he's going to go do a bunch of casting, and then what's going to happen is EG's going to hear, like, oh, he knows exactly when Mikhail should be built. He knew they should have had a Locket a minute earlier. That's just stupid. You know, the guy finished the Frost Queen's claim, but a Locket would have definitely been better there. They'll realize how on point he is with his build paths, because that's what he's going for here. It's better, Monty, rather than a jack of all trades, it's better to be known for one amazing quality. So Krepo's going to be the person in the game who builds the best. He's like one of the people who built like Chartres, you know, the cathedral in, like, I can't even remember where it is. And he's going to go to that level, okay? And then EG's going to come back to him, and he's going to say, well, listen, I know I can unlock the potential of Altec and Pobelter, but I'm going to need to have a higher salary this time. Like, I've got a lot more responsibility, and we're going to drive it up like that. Like, that's what this show's been about, Krepo. So we've done a good job advertising you here.
Thank you very much. I'll 10%. 10% is what we agreed on, right?
The publicity fee, yeah.
Yeah.
People often come to me, Krepo, asking me to represent them in public relations matters and boost their image, and they want to be associated with my name, but I have to be very selective on who I let join my world.
If we have one of those like Venn diagrams where they overlap and like which skills we have in common, there's very little there, so like we can definitely learn from each other there.
Krepo, I love to eat French fries and mayonnaise, so I feel like we've got a kindred, we've got a brotherhood there.
We have a solid base to work on.
Yeah, that's what we'll base our relationship on. Okay, so other team, now we'll go back to Korea. So Samsung, the team who had probably the two best teams in the world and the world champion, lost everyone and has now ended up a team where the only player that I know on it is Casper, the guy who was previously Ice Bear, and he was the substitute for Pumandu during the SKT, and obviously that didn't go so well. And he's the only one on Samsung now. Now, you've always said this Casper guy is good, right, Monty? He's a good laner. You always thought he was worth a chance.
He was a good laner, really good mechanics. A little not as good at Mondu. He was better in lane than Mondu ever was. He was maybe a little bit better mechanically, but his decision making and engagements in the mid and late game were not as good as Mondu. But that could be fixed with time.
What hopes do you have for Samsung if they've lost coaches and they've lost every single star?
Not a lot. They got Zet Engine too, who has changed his ID to Fury, who is the former AD carry for Prime Optimus, who is a Jinx specialist. So he was okay. I don't remember too much about him. He was okay. So maybe he's gotten better and he can do well. He's pretty far up on the Korean solo queue ladder right now. But
do you think eventually Korean teams will like start spending more money? Because like China's buying everybody out.
I hope so. Well, there are two things that's probably going to happen. I think China is in the middle of a buying frenzy bubble right now, and I think that they're going to figure out that they're paying too much for these like potential streaming deals and whatever. Even though these are a lot of times like billionaire plaything teams, so I think it's going to go two ways. I seriously hope, and Korean teams, Kespa, get it together, pay the players. I hope that changes, but also I do think that the China, like we're kind of like in a bubble right now in China, and that's going to pop.
Do you think eventually Korea will catch up on the West, start streaming?
In terms of payment?
No.
Streaming?
And start streaming and lower their average skill?
Man.
Do you actually? Because Korea was always historically praised.
I want the players to live successful lives while they have pro gaming so that we can create a healthy environment for people to go into pro gaming and to be able to make the money they should make.
But at the same time, Korea was always praised for like having these super focused players where it is win or you're out mentality, and that's the only reason they're good, because they don't get distracted by streaming, and then everyone's like, oh yeah, TSM is so mediocre because they spend all their time streaming, yet they constantly get applauded because TSM has the biggest budget. Well, guess why? Because they're streaming. So it would be slightly ironical if Korea would eventually evolve into a streaming.
It's different. Like the ideal would be for them to go back to those Brood War levels of payment. I mean, okay, realistically, Samsung is a top Fortune 500 company. If they wanted, and you can't tell me, they were the amount they were paying their LoL team, we just got numbers that there were 288 million unique viewers for the whole course of the World Championship that they won. That is the best marketing money they've probably ever spent, ever. Samsung as an organization. Like, their cost to benefit on that is insane. So it's not like TSM, oh yeah, they have a lot of money. No, Samsung, the multi-hundred billion conglomerate, has a lot of money. Like, they can pay the players. SK Telecom sponsors basketball teams, baseball teams in Korea. They've got the money. It's not a big deal. They just need to open up the old wallet and pay what these players are worth.
Do you think Korea will get worse if they start streaming?
Not substantially. I mean, you're going to play solo queue anyway. You might as well just do it. And they are streaming. They're streaming on Azubu all the time.
Okay, what I was going to say was I actually want it to go the other way. I don't want it to be as altruistic as Monty was making there, where everyone has an awesome life. I love it when it's a high-pressure situation where lives are being ruined on the results of a fucking video game, and this really is like the be-all and end-all. Like when Ryu gets beaten after having a wonderful tournament, he's dog shit, and everyone get him the fuck out of there. Let's get a new guy in here. Faker, you are God. Like, let's take everything that this guy's worked for, give it to the other guy. And that's essentially what I want to do, Krepo, is I think there shouldn't even be prize money in Worlds. I think it should just all be one big pool for the first place team, and then it's sort of like that scene in The Dark Knight where the Joker just gets that pool cue and he snaps it, and there's those two henchmen and he just says, we're gonna have tryouts. That's what I want to create, Krepo, for all of you players. And I want to create a dog-eat-dog world where you're just going to kill each other and crawl across each other's corpses for the glory of esports.
No, it's going to be more like gladiatorial.
I'm sorry, I don't watch.
I
don't watch women's films. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're referring to there.
Battle Royale. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, Battle Royale. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the way you tried to pronounce it, like in an Asian manner there, and sort of like almost racist manner.
It's listed as Royale on the IMDb.
Okay.
But this is a tangent.
Really? Okay.
Really? Jesus Christ.
I'm very nervous watching the Battle Royale. Okay, whatever. So the last one we've got to do is CJ, and I think we know why we've left it last. Let's start the organ music. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today on this very sad day in history when it has been announced that Lord Flame, in many ways the saviour and light of the world, has left us. After 3 days of being dead, he has officially announced that he has departed from CJ and Blaze, who are now CJ Blaze, who are now CJ No Blaze, now no Flame either, now no love left in my life. Now just a barren existence, a shell of a man, wandering through esports, trying to find love in all the wrong places, and then they leave him and they lose to Katie Bullets, and then never qualify for Worlds. And then people say that
you mean repeatedly lose to the KT.
Oh yeah, and then people say that Impact's better, and then people say that Loop is better, and then even Flame dares to say that Impact was better. Why would you even do that? Just have some compassion, man. And then just gives up and just leaves. No, but actually, okay, so Flame's left CJ. Do you get the sense, Monty, that this is a retirement? Do you think he's going to go to a Korean team? Will he go to China?
I'm sure he's had a lot of offers. I don't think he has a place to go yet. I think he's just...
Well, I mean, I've made him an offer. If he never needs a place to go. Listen, I'm actually going to Korea next week. I've got an apartment. It's got a double bed there. Like, I have a computer he can practice on, PC bang really nearby. You'll
give him shoulder rubs while he plays.
I'll give him his, like... I'll give him the right diet of, like, raw eggs in the morning, and then we'll go running up and down the steps near us to that tower in Seoul, and we'll get him back on track, and he will become the world champion. I can do it. I can... Flame, just trust me, bro. I can do this.
You will rekindle the flame.
Exactly. What do you think in general of this move, though, Monty? Because it's a bit shocking, right? Unless this was his choice.
I think it was his choice.
You don't think that CJ just chose to go with Shy and therefore there was no place left for him in CJ?
Well, he could have stayed and played on the B team.
That would be great. Just spend all my days practicing 12 hours a day to play on the B team of a team that's not even good. Okay, yeah. Meanwhile, Space just sits there with his little fucking space face, always doing this goddamn face on the starters, playing and going, hey guys, I'm about to get a positive win ratio in OGN. And then them looking at him like, why do you curse us, you anchor around our necks?
Aren't they getting a new jungler too?
They have a new
Ambition is now the jungler, yeah.
Well, Ambition is now the jungler, and they have one that I don't know.
Ambition moving to jungle is also just like, what?
Is that an extra bar in a space prison?
I don't understand the ambition to jungle move whatsoever. That is just...
If even a CLG coach doesn't understand that, there's something substantially wrong with his move.
Trick is their other jungler. I don't know if that's somebody who has an ID change right now. It was just announced while this call was going on what the official rosters were, and I don't know who he is. He could be just an amateur player, or he could be somebody who changed his ID. Swift is also still noticeably not anywhere, which is super surprising.
So on the surface, Monty, even though this sounds negative, etc., CJ is one of the few teams that retained some star names that were decent still. Do you expect CJ as it their first team? Should it be a good team in OGN?
No.
Why not?
Because I don't think Ambition's going to be a great jungler. And I also think that Coco kind of fell out when Nidalee and LeBlanc were nerfed, and maybe he's gotten his feet back under him at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, Link did have problems. Coco, you meant. Sorry, yeah, continue.
Anyway, Roar was formerly of the Jin Air Falcons, and he's another AD carry on the team now, so we'll see how he does. They also have a new support player named Max, who I also don't know.
Okay, well, I like this name anyway.
So I don't really know. I don't really know what's going on there. I don't think CJ is going to be the greatest team. I think that if we look at the teams that are in right now, probably Najin and SKT have the highest potential of being good. And as for where Flame could go,
Najin and who?
SKT.
SKT. So who your Tigers isn't already up there?
Nah, not yet. I think Jury's still out on them. I've only seen him play 3 games, so.
Jury's got a lot of deciding to do.
I know, these juries, when are they ever going to come in? I mean, Pobelter needs you to make a decision on his career, guys. Come on, Jury, get back in. It's been 4 years.
Who's on jury duty? Who's the jury?
It's the OGN Legion. But anyway, as for where Flame could go, I don't think IM's going to replace Lilac because he's their captain. I don't think the Tigers are going to replace Smeb because his performance has been good recently. I don't think Jin Air is going to replace Trace. I don't think Najin is going to replace Duke. So that leaves like Samsung, KT, and SKT, where I think he could go in Korea. Or that it would surprise me least. I think these are the most likely teams, just because SKT could be looking for a more carry-oriented top laner, especially since they have an ultra-safe bottom lane now in Bang and Wolf, or Pickaboo if they decide to use him. Well, Pickaboo's not ultra-safe, but I think they'll go with Bang and Wolf for a while. And so I think that with the consistency and the more passive play out of that bottom lane, they have room for a big carry top laner. I think KT could use him just because he's an upgrade over Someday, or Iksu, who's their new play. I don't know who he is.
Don't play games with my heart, Monty. Don't tell me that Flame might join SK Telecom and play with Faker, because to me that's like that scene in the Shawshank Redemption where he crawls through those miles of shit in that pipe and then he gets out and the rain is coming down. It's like, like, that's what that would be like. So don't play games with my heart like that, Monty. I know you like. I normally like hypotheticals, but these ones hurt. Okay,
that is the gif I want of you, Thorin. That is the gif I want of you in the shit tunnel and then coming out and then the rain.
Yeah.
And then he finds Morgan Freeman as Faker. God himself.
So,
okay.
Krepo, do you have any thoughts on any of these Korean teams? Do you know much about what's going on over there?
No, I haven't followed the new rosters at all, and I just hope he finds a good team. Just
historically, do you get a sense that Korea will just rebound and it'll turn out that a lot of these new guys we don't know will turn out to be awesome and the coaching system will work? And do you buy into that as hard as some people do?
I mean, it has to be, right? Season 2 we started, we were literally years ahead because League wasn't even Korea, and then we were like, oh, those Koreans, there's no way. I still remember quotes. There's no way they will catch up in time. Oh, they caught up, all right. And then there's no way they'll get ahead of us, and they did. And then 2 years, they produced a world-class team. Maybe this year they won't produce a team that is literally leagues and bounds ahead of another team, but they will definitely be able to produce a team that is at least, well, that will be in contention for the first place at Worlds, right?
Do you think that of these new players, we'll really get a player who, even with Mata being in China with his problems, can be better than Mata is as a support player, and a new guy who can be better as a top player than Save? Will we get that level of individual talent beyond the team?
Currently, or will be better than Mata was
by the next Worlds arrives? Say we'll give him a year to get into the scene.
But do you want him to be better than Mata when Mata is playing at Season 5 Worlds, or do you want him to be better than Mata was at Season 4 Worlds? Because I feel like we've almost reached the cap of how far ahead of the scene and how good you can be.
Okay, so you can't get much better than that.
I disagree with that
comparatively, right?
because I think that Samsung White was more dominant at Worlds this year than SK Telecom was at Worlds last year.
Yeah, but he's saying they hit the cap though, Monty.
I don't know. I would have thought we hit the cap last year, man, but it wasn't true.
3 towers and that inhibitor at 11 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, Monty, I think you're thinking too fondly of SK Telecom because you're thinking, well, I thought SK Telecom was the best team ever. You have to realize Krepo thought SK Telecom were going to lose to Royal Club in the final. So actually, he's surprised that those plucky underdogs managed to overcome in the final. And, you know, he says good on them. They deserved that one. It was a lucky run, but you did it.
You see, though, you don't always have to like give too much credibility to me because here I am stuck in this talk show. Still.
Yeah.
Begging for royalties. But yeah, all bullshit aside, SKT
begging for royalties. Did you say? Okay. Yeah. I've got. So yeah, I'm just making you feel at home. I'm like freak on this show. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. White was ahead, right? And they played the game like they basically outclassed people as a team. Like they just played it meticulously, and then they flipped the switch, and they would. Like they just they would just do that, right?
Yeah, there's always a team ahead of the curve, though. Blue was ahead of the curve for most of the year in terms of that team play, and White, I think, learned a lot from Blue, and then had the better raw talent.
They're all gone.
Yeah, they're all gone. Sad.
Who's gonna feed the talent? You know.
Anyway, the point is Faker showed up in spring and then won Worlds in like 6 months, 7 months.
Right, we just need another Faker. It's simple.
It's
yeah,
simple.
and then Jesus was born around about 4 BC, and then he actually was the savior of the whole world. Therefore, in like 28 BC, we can just expect the new Jesus to come around, and then that happened every single time after that, right, Monty? It wasn't an exception or anything. I mean, I think we're getting into probably the most dangerous territory we've ever been in, Monty. But at least I picked Christianity as the example there, Krepo. I could have gone another route there.
Could have gone worse. Yes, exactly. Yeah, we'll see.
I do think we're going to see new talent develop in Korea, though, because there's a lot of opportunity. And I think that there are going to be so many amateur players that are introduced to these professional teams and organizations that one or two of them is going to impress.
Krepo, one last question to end the show on, because I want to just do one last topic where I feel like you might have a different view to Monty. To Monty, currently, Faker is unassailable, okay? No one is like as good, and no one is as good just as like he's the player in League of Legends, even still. To you, did Mata, at the level he was at in the end of the finals there, could Mata have been the best player in the whole world above even Faker to you?
It's hard because it'll never show as a support. Because you don't make those like insane plays. But like I think Mata was a Faker of support. I'll put it that way. Is he better than Faker? I don't know. At his prime? Like coming into World Season 3, I didn't know much about Faker. I heard the hype, and I was like, yeah, okay, how can it be? And then I watched him play, and I was literally, I played his game for a living, and he was doing shit that I couldn't even think of in times that I felt like Faker was playing the game at, how you watch a video and you can slow it down to half speed, and then just react. I feel that's the way Faker is playing. He had double the time to assess these situations, if not triple the time, and then make the right choice. Some of those choices which were so out of the box for me that they were just genius. And well, Mata, I could follow what Mata was doing, His vision was just immaculate. Like, he made the right calls, but it was just perfect. But Faker had, like, this little sense to it that was beyond perfect, But maybe that's just me. But I think Mata was definitely the best in his role and a well-deserved MVP.
Mata, the Faker of support, Monty. You buy it?
Absolutely. He's the best support player that's ever played to this point.
Do you worry when he goes to China he'll drop off at all, or he won't be able to have the impact?
Of course I worry. I hope he doesn't. I love watching him play.
I've got an aspect that we haven't discussed, actually. Maybe we can do this as a final topic. So one of the weird qualities of League of Legends is that historically China has had all these great AD carries, and we've seen that a lot of them have been very strong. But funnily enough, historically they haven't had such a deep pool at support. So if we get these good support players like Mata, obviously, goes over... I mean, we saw Zero was able to, admittedly, it might be an exception there, but Zero wasn't a great support player. If Mata goes with an AD carry who's even good, couldn't that potentially be an area where we haven't seen it yet, but that could be a massive change to the power structure in that sense, if they had some godlike bot lane in China?
Sure. I think that a lot of the other players would learn very quickly from that combination and be able to adapt, and it would level up their skill.
That's the bit that bums me out a bit, though, is that you don't get Mata go and then go and play with Uzi, and you don't get Heart go and then go and play with Nami. You know, you don't get the combo we'd want, you know, if you really want the dream attempt.
But isn't the strength in the communication though? Didn't like when you heard Piglet, he had some translated comments on that matter. He said like, yeah, when Special is good, really good player, but he has a hesitation. Instead of asking, should we do this, or maybe we could have done that, Mata would have been like, do this, do that. Is a lot of that going to be lost in communication? It was Mata and like so good because he literally just told his puppet AD carry what to do. That guy executed it because he had really good mechanics. Is there going to be a lot of that lost in translation? Like the hesitation of switching language, half a second on a call can be the difference between like life and death on a bot lane all in. So will we be able even to judge Mata in China towards Mata in Korea due to the language barrier?
Well, we're about to find out. I think that's a very valid question. I think that if he's with a top tier AD carry, that he will not have so many problems, because I think a lot of that has to be instinctual, at least in the game itself. So I don't think that communication is going to be too difficult, but sorting out things outside of the game may be harder.
Yeah, just going over replays and say like, okay, this is if I say up, I want you to do this, and then if I say down, maybe.
We'll see.
Do you have any final thoughts, Krepo, to leave us on? Because Monty never has anything, we just end basically. So do you have any final thoughts to leave us
on? Let's see. I missed the opportunity to do a flash dance in here. That's like my only thing. So
the flashbang dance.
So imagine we did that, and then I'm gonna leave it at that. I want to thank you for sticking it in my porridge and whisking it around, trying to get that saying out there.
Let's make it a thing, people. Let's get it trending. Stick that in your porridge and stir it around.
Also, remember to vote on Krepo's fate at tinyurl.com.
I'll be certain to do that.
Decides.
Vote
it's
early and
actually
often.
1-1 right now. It's Thorin. You're the deciding vote for until this vote airs.
Okay. Right. Well, as usual, like sign up to Facebooks and all that sort of shite, and Twitter and YouTube. It's all good. And one day we might make a shiny penny off this, Monty. And on that day, half of that penny will be yours, my friend. And one day, Krepo will even demand a share of that penny. But that's a long way in the future now.
I always wanted to be more British like you so I could get a hay penny.
Okay, and on that note, that's the end of the show.